me now? I have a Chinedu Brown that has said he can't hear, she can't hear. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to this edition of our WLI session. Today, we have a special program planned. Unlike if you're just joining us for the first time, or if you're one of our regulars here at the Women's Leadership Institute, welcome back. We are focused on transforming Africa through women leadership, and we have a lot of programs that we've done. Okay, thank you. You can hear me now. To encourage, empower, and get women together and lift them up to become leaders in whatever field they're in, whether in school, at work, in the society, in their communities. We engage with women at all levels, and we offer various products and various sessions and skills to help build leadership in women. Today is going to be a special program that we have. We are celebrating Women's Month all month in March. So our gift this month is a two-day packed session of training courses that will teach practical skills to women in the areas of adaptive leadership, entrepreneurship, networking, personal development, and building human capital. So it's not the regular discussion that we're going to have. We're actually going to be practically engaging with our trainers on these courses and these issues, and be delivering practical skills that women can apply to take them forward, to move them up in whatever it is they're doing, and to support women's quest for entrepreneurship and leadership positions. In typical WLI fashion, we only bring you the best of the best. So we have a few panelists joining us today who I will introduce as we go ahead. And we just would first of all start off with our welcome address. Our chair lady, the person in person of Ambassador Dr. Kema Chikwe, will be joining us imminently. But before then, we can start off by introducing the rest of our team today. We have Ms. Somachi Kachiku, who is our co-convener. So I don't know if you want to say a few words quickly.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, I'm sorry, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our leadership program.
Thank you. That's the co-convener of our program. And we have Ms. Adora Ndukwe Ugu, who is going to join us as well and begin and kick us off with our welcome, and we'll go straight into our sessions for today. So Adora is a public financial management and governance expert. She sits on the board of the Women's Leadership Institute, and I see that we haven't put anybody up on the panel yet. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So as a form of a background, I'll tell you about the courses that we have today. As our heading suggests, we are talking about adaptive leadership styles and skills in a changing world. It's no surprise to anyone that our world is changing rapidly, given our health crisis, social unrest in different parts of the world, but businesses and lives still must go on. So how do we adapt? How do we manage? How do we navigate difficult times or trying times or changing times in a way that brings value to whatever it is we're doing in our work, in our lives, in our homes? And how do we continue to maintain leadership, success, and entrepreneurship growth in these challenging times? So our first course today is specifically on adaptive leadership, and the course is delivered by Hodan Osman. Hodan is a foreign policy and development expert. She has an MPA from Harvard School of Government. She also holds an MSc in Human Rights and International Relations. And this course that you're about to receive is actually offered at Harvard Kennedy School at the graduate and executive levels. So this is really a special gift that we're offering free of charge, a Harvard prepared course that Hodan will be taking us through. She is a qualified expert in different areas. She offers the course at Harvard and the Global Fund. So she has been teaching adaptive leadership methodology for a long time. Over the last 5 years, Hodan has worked in Mogadishu, Somalia, where she supports the Office of the President, Finance Minister, and other executives. So please be sure to visit our website to find out more about the incredible work that Hodan Usman has been involved with. And please, I would ask that as the course starts, pay attention because you're going to receive a great deal of value from this course. We ask that you use the chat room as much as you can. The course is going to be interactive. So at some point we will engage with our participants, ask questions, answer any questions, and invite you to take part in some exercises that she may have. So I will hand over to Hodan now for her to take us through the adaptive leadership course. Hodan, we can't hear you yet. Just 1 second. We are connecting to the audio. I can see that now. We're getting ready to go through the course that Hodan has prepared for us.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Great. Sorry about that. I was switching devices, so bear with me while I switch back. My apologies. Just give me. I need to now switch back to the one I needed to be on. Sorry about that. Just give me a second to do that.
Okay, so while we're switching over and getting ready, please be reminded that if you have any questions, you can introduce yourself in the chat room. Any questions you have, please use the Q&A box and we will take questions at the end of the session.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
We can hear you, Hodan.
Hello?
We can hear you.
We can hear you. I don't think you can hear us.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you about that. Thank you. And thanks for waiting. I think it's good afternoon now. So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to those of you that are on the other side of the world. Thank you for that really warm introduction. And it's my honor to join this group. Really excited to be here, and happy Women's Month. I'm glad we're taking a full month here. Just a little bit about myself. I know you heard a bit of my bio there, but just a bit about my story and in terms of like what drove me towards the adaptive leadership framework. And I was first introduced to the adaptive leadership framework when I went to HKS back in 2017. So it hasn't been quite 5 years yet. And it was there that I was able to start to kind of really understand some of the problems that I was seeing. And what drove me to kind of seek this as a way of understanding is not too long ago, in about 2012, I went back to my homeland of Somalia when it was 2 decades post-war. And the first recognized country, the first recognized government in the country got established after decades of war. So it was a period of euphoria because we thought we put conflict behind us. The government was building, people were mobilizing and coming together. A lot of diaspora were coming back. And I thought this was really a great moment to go back and be part of this historic change, and hoping that I can bring in some of my experience and such from the outside, just like I think all diasporas at times aim to do. And because my background was in finance, I spent quite a bit of time it started in the central bank and then went on to the Ministry of Finance. And over there, what I really started working on is fiscal policies and such. And then one problem that really just kept persisting is payment. Now it sounds super technical and super easy to fix. Just pay people, pay them through bank accounts and set up a system and a process to be able to do that. And we thought, we were successful with doing that with the civil servants. Then we were successful with doing that with the police. And then finally it was the military's turn to do that. Now in my country, security is a big issue. And I think it is in every country probably. It's probably like the toughest area to bring about change as well. And I find myself kind of approaching this similar to other things as well, like quite technical. We need to, again, do the same thing. We have our lovely project plan. We have, the World Bank stamped, best practices procedures. We've got, the authorities on board that will tell us what to do from A to Z. Now we just have to line that up and go. But as much as all of that was in place, we just couldn't do it. It became such a difficult thing to do, and so controversial as well. It ended up with different departments not being able to speak to each other. Ministry of Defense wouldn't support it, then the military wasn't doing it, then we had the heads of military do it, but then the soldiers wouldn't do it. And then we were going into different territories as well that weren't able to cooperate. So something that we thought would be like, quite technical and straightforward in the way that we had it done, ended up facing quite a level of resistance over 2 years. And the first thing was like, oh yeah, it must be corruption, because unfortunately that word follows our countries on this side of the region quite easily. So okay, fine, just cut certain people out of the process, and and then we should be able to do it if that's what it is. Again, try to address these things, try to do reports, try to be transparent about what needs to be done, and it still wouldn't happen. And then finally, we took a pause from that, and then we saw other projects that we wanted to do, whether it was around debt relief or whether it was other types of reforms, that we would kind of follow the same pattern in a way. We've got these lovely project plans, the most technical expertise sitting on it. The minister would always say, okay, and then it just kind of stops and nothing rolls through, especially for those that required a lot of different actors coming together. So, finally, after being introduced to this framework a bit and kind of looking back in hindsight, it occurred to me that really what the problem was and what we were really missing in there was a massive, massive deficit of trust in that country that I just didn't really account for in the way that I should have. This was a country that was coming back after decades of civil war, in an area where the government didn't trust the donors didn't trust the government. Within the government, departments didn't trust each other. The people didn't trust the government didn't trust the people. Security forces did not trust civilians did not trust the security forces. Within the military itself, the heads in certain areas did not trust the areas. If you were a tribe from that region under that security head, you would not trust the ones in there. So here I was trying to kind of push in these processes, but really like what the biggest challenge was, as I see it, was this massive trust deficit. And what would it have looked like if I was able to really understand that at the time and understand about, okay, how do we build trust in this thing that we're trying to do? How do we build trust amongst each other, so that we're able to push these things through, instead of all of us assuming something about each other, whether I was assuming they were corrupt, whether they were assuming I was naive, whatever our perceptions and assumptions about each other, it was like, how do we get to that point? And when I look back, I almost feel like if I spend as much time trying to build trust, even within my own ministry, instead of really trying to get the technical PowerPoint project reports down, I think it may have been able to make progress on that a bit. So this is really what drove me to kind of seek out answers and to seek out and understand, okay, how do we do change in context like this? Like, how do we succeed? And a lot of the times you'll see, like, what we do is that we look up to so-called leaders, I guess, or as authority figures, as you'll learn later on as we go through this. So I think this really gets me to what I'm trying to do here in this session. And I'm going to start off by something that might sound controversial, by saying that what this methodology teaches is that And I'm going to tell you, there's no such thing as leaders. So there's no such thing as leaders. There's no such thing as, we go around always saying this is a bad leader, or this is a good leader, or this is an effective leader. But there's no such thing as leaders. And the reason we say that is that we sometimes confuse authority with leadership. So I'm going to start off by I'm going to share some slides, and I'm going to start off by defining what authority is, and then we can go back to this idea of saying there's no such thing as leaders. And I welcome you guys to post comments onto the chat. Since this is a webinar, it'd be great to be interactive, and I'm not seeing any any feedback, so it'd be good to kind of see your comments so that I'll know where to kind of direct some of my points or examples at. So please feel free to share what you like as I talk, and I'd love to pick that up. Would it be possible to enable me to share my screen, please? Okay. And while we wait on that, if you have just any questions, again, please feel free to put them in the chat. Thank you. Okay, let me just open this. And great. Are you guys able to see my screen? I'm assuming. Great. So as I was saying earlier, I think what I'd like to do is have the distinction made between leadership and authority. And again, I think we do a lot of the times kind of confuse them by thinking, leadership is about authority or the position that you may hold or any influence you have. So or even about character. Sometimes we'll say, oh, this person is a charismatic leader, or this person is, this person is likable, and and that makes him or her such a good leader, whatever it may be. But that's not what leadership is defined by. What we want to define leadership by is the work itself. Like, leadership is about solving the tough problems and building capacity to be able to mobilize people and solve these tough problems. So that's what I'd like to kind of begin with and talk about during this session. Sorry, I'm just going to get my chat open here so I can keep track. Great. Thanks, everyone. All right. So then what is authority? And I think a lot of the times when people talk about leadership, they're likely referring to authority. And when we talk about authority, we're seeing authority as a contract, essentially. And it's a contract that really is between the authority and the people, or those who the service is being provided to. So A and B. So what an authority person does is provide a service to the people, and the people in turn give this authority person power. Now, what does these services look like? So what do we expect from our authority? So what we expect from our authority is direction, protection, and order. Order being, letting us know what the norms or maintenance of a particular area is, and giving us direction in terms of where are we headed, where is this going? Protection, protecting us. So it could be, a president of a country per se, they have certain responsibilities around the security of that country, that certain responsibilities around the direction the country is headed in, or order, ensuring there's, law and order in place. But in a nutshell, those are really the services that we expect from any kind of authority. And in return, what we give this person of authority is power in that way. So if I use myself as an example right now in this class, I would consider myself to be in a position of authority right now. I consider myself to be in a position of authority because I am one of the panelists. I am the person who is giving this lecture right now, per se. So in this lecture, I'm a person of authority because I have this expertise. I've been brought on to do this. So I have an agreement with the people who have organized this. During this session that I have authority, you're expecting some kind of direction from me in terms of what are we going to learn? Where is this going? You're expecting, some kind of protection. Perhaps it's me making sure that I'm protecting the time so that, we end begin with in time, or me protecting the boundaries of this class to make sure, no one's, attacking anyone or insulting anyone, and that we're going in some kind of order. So in return for these services that I'm giving, and you are giving me the space to be able to provide this work to you. And that's essentially how authority works, and this is what we expect from our authority. Now this is quite different than from what we say leadership, in a sense. And an authority could be both formal and informal. So if I'm looking at my formal authority right now, on this axiom, my formal authority right now is that it would probably be quite static. Until I do something stupid and I'm told not to present anymore, or I bore all of you to death, and my time is cut short and I'm asked to leave, then I can lose my authority. So my formal authority stays put, but my informal authority, that can actually change in a way. And your informal authority is something that you can build up and something that you can actually lose. And that really is a lot of times kind of dependent on the amount of social capital that I'm building up. So for example, when this session started, I likely had a lot of informal authority for Adora, perhaps because we were in the same class together. She knows who I am well, so perhaps I had large informal authority with her. Or I may have had high amounts of informal authority for some of you who, may be interested in Harvard and know that this methodology is coming from there. My informal authority may have been high with you. With others, my informal authority may have been really low. Because maybe I'm not from West Africa. I may not understand that context. You don't like my green sweater, whatever it is, my informal authority may have been quite low with you. And as the class goes on, it's about how do I then build up that, I may be able to build up that informal authority with some of you, but not with all of you. And for some of you, I may lose some of that informal authority in the beginning that I started with. Now, all of this is to say that whether it's formal or informal, with authority, it is a service that we are providing. And with the service, this is how we are able to then get power. Now, authority comes from different types of sources. So for example, if it's a president, it's an election, and that's how a president was able to have authority. If it's, for example, I hired you for a job, you have a list of specifications or expectations on that job, that is where your authority is coming from. And that's essentially what the bounds of authority is going to look like. And as long as you remain within those bounds of authority, then you maintain that position. So I'm going to do just a quick little exercise. I hope you will indulge me and be able to put into the chat. So I'm going to now switch to my other device, and I hope, oh great, thank you for allowing me that. There we go. Yes. I have my whiteboard on now. Great. Okay. So if I look at, I'm going to just throw out to try and understand what may be some of the expectations some of you may have on me in this role as a facilitator. So if you can just type whatever it is in the comment, that would be great for us to start with. So I'm just going to look through the comments. I would assume one of the expectations would be to speak clearly or slowly. What might be another expectations that you have? And again, please feel free to put in the comments. Clarity on the subject, yeah. What else? I hope you guys like my writing. What else? What might be other expectations you have? To make session interactive, okay. What else? educative. Okay. We have interesting. Great. So these are the practical tips. Got it. Perfect. So these are in essence then what the expectations are on me as a facilitator for this session. And when you look at what these expectations are, sometimes it resembles a job description per se as well. And now what this creates is the sphere of my authority. So my authority now is bounded by this, because these are the expectations that I need to meet. These are the services that you're looking from me. So I need to be clear. I need to be able to give tips. I need to educate. I need to speak clearly. I need to do these things in order for you to say, yes, you've met my expectations. Great, I've respected the bounds of what's expected of me, and that's what's needed from me as an authority. So, and again, this can be related to any profession you have. So suppose this is a teacher at a primary school. Same thing would be probably around her. She's expecting to, help her students learn. She's expecting to be able to communicate. She's expected to have lessons planned. She's expected to have these things. And these are the bounds. Now, when these are the bounds of our authority and what we need to do, what happens if I get outside of your expectation? What happens? And feel free to put in the comments what you think. Yeah. So while we wait for that, in terms of, I mean, it's an open-ended question in that way. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Is it about what? So I was asking that if these are, if the expectations people have on me are really what the bounds of my authority are, what happens when I get out of these expectations? And I think this is where we start running into resistance and issues. Yes, you may lose respect for me. Yeah, that happens because people don't want me to go out of these bounds, right? So if I get out of these bounds, and for example, if I hurt anyone in this class, or if I say any about Nigerian politics that nobody wants to hear, I will be fired, and I'll be kicked out, or people will stop listening to me. But it's not always a good thing for us to always stick within our bounds. And I'll go back to that example that I shared of a teacher, for example. So if a teacher, if the expectations are on a teacher is to, and we understand the expectation is to like teach our kids, have lessons planned, make sure that she is, I don't know, makes her room conducive for teaching, whatever it may be. What if the teacher one day was seeing an interaction between two students, and she gets involved and she helps the student out, and she brings the parent in, and she and the parents get upset, like, what are you doing talking to my child? Like, why are you stepping out of your bounds? We expect you to do X with our kids, but not Y. But that teacher thought she had to come out and do this because this is what was needed at that moment. And we see, and even though that's a small, we see this over and over again. Maybe your job is an accounting clerk, and you're sitting in there, and your job is just to kind of put transaction in, takes transactions out. But one day you see some kind of corruption activity that's happening, also, and you raise voice to it. How many people want you to actually step out of that and to be able to do this? So at times when we say, yes, this is our job description, this is the confines in which we are working based on the expectations people have on us. And if we perform these expectations, people are happy with it. It's like, great job, you delivered, great job, you did this as a teacher, you didn't step out, or great job, you stayed as a clerk and you didn't step out of your boundaries. But that as well also imprisons us in there. And if we can't take the risk and step out of these boundaries sometimes, to do the things that are necessary. And that would be the act of exercising leadership. because we're taking a risk and seeing, okay, I need to do this at this moment. But a lot of the times we're forced to stick within these bounds for the same reason that all of you have pointed here. People will be disappointed in you. Disagreements are going to arise. People are going to lose value. People are going to lose respect or whatever it may be. And this is what we see that's happening every single day in this world. If we take the United States, for example, and the history of race throughout it, figures like Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr. or any of the civil rights activists, these are people that people did not want to listen to, or even our forefathers that are fighting for independence. They exactly stepped out of their bounds. Africa and colonizations, they were not supposed to step up. That belonged to Europe. But what they did is exactly step out of these bonds of what a Black man should have been or what an African country should have been. They stepped out of these bonds. And it's when you step out of these bonds beyond the scope of your authority that you start to exercise leadership. And it's risky behavior. So this is why it's really important to have the distinction between authority and leadership, because authority is about fulfilling the role of that position, fulfilling the requirements that that position is asking for. But and that can work if problems are simple and and things are in the box as opposed to outside the box. It's quite easy to fulfill on those. But once we're faced with really complex problems and challenges, that requires us to actually step out of the bonds that have been put on us through expectations and our authority. So I'm just going to close this. Thank you. You can see me now. Great. So that's, just illustrating a bit about, why it's good not to kind of think authority is the same thing as leadership. I'm just going to go back to my slides here. So we talked about this, and a lot of you have raised this in your chat as well. And it's the idea of what happens when we get out of that box, again, that trust that people have given us so that we're able to fulfill the expectation of service. What happens when you deliver information that conflicts with those expectations? What are people going to say? How are they going to treat you? What happens when you come out of that and but instead you tell people what they need to hear instead of what they expect from you? And even though we were using professional examples up to now, we can flip this, and use roles such as the roles of a mother, the role of a woman. What's the expectation of a society of what a woman should be, or how women should behave? I can probably give you a list of these types of action and characteristics. I know what it looks like in my country, or what a role of a mother should be. And then what happens when a woman then goes outside those bounds? Like, is she seen as, a loose woman? Is she seen as an agitator? Is she seen as a troublemaker? So these are the things that do come up. So this is why we're saying, like, the work of leadership then is not about the role you have. It's not about the position that's given to you. We view leadership as a practice, as something that you practice. It's not a set of characteristics. It's not a authority or position that you hold. And the reason that we want to look at leadership as a practice rather than a role, because what this does now, it allows leadership to be practiced by anyone and at any level. It doesn't limit leadership to authority positions. It doesn't limit leadership to whoever's in politics. It doesn't limit leadership to the boss. And I think that, and I've seen that again and again happen. I've seen it in my country and other places where it's like, oh, we're just waiting for the boss to do it. We're just waiting for this. Meanwhile, we have the ability to be able to exercise leadership and take that risk, but we don't take that risk. And the reason we don't take that risk is because we're bound so tightly by those expectations, and going back to that circle that I was showing you, that it's hard to come out of that. And I think this is why it's really important to say, okay, this is what my position, roles, expectation, whatever it is as an authority, but that's not leadership. to practice leadership, it means at times coming out of that. And it means that anyone can do it. And the reason I think this is important for women especially, because it doesn't relegate the idea of leadership to, Adora's gonna laugh at me, but this is something we call like big man politics. It creates and opens that space up for anybody to be able to do that. And we've seen this happen in work that we've done in Zambia with adolescents and different folks. I'm going to take a bit of a pause right now and just do a little bit of exercise. Oh, thank you. Do a little bit of exercise. And if you could take just 30 seconds and try and note a time where you may have come out of your bounds or what was expected of you. To do a particular activity that you felt was right, or to engage in work that people thought was in your purview, but you stepped out of that. And if you take just a few seconds and jot it down for yourself and think about what that position, what that moment was, what happened, that would be great. So I'm just gonna give you just about a minute to do that. And then it'll be great to get some people to share. Great, thanks everyone. I want to know who would like to kind of, if you have something to share, if you want to raise your hand, that would be great. And I would love to get the moderators to help me just pick anyone who'd like to kind of tell us about a time where they went outside their bounds and then what happened. And I can't see raise hands, so I'm assuming the moderator can see that.
If you would like to participate as a panelist, please just indicate in the chat room and then we can add you. Hold on, I think some people would need some more clarification on the question so they know exactly what you're asking from them.
Great. I'll repeat the question, but if anyone's ready, please just bring them on. And I think through their answer, they'll know as well. But essentially, I was saying that I was given the example of how, our roles and our positions sometimes have certain expectations on us. And at times we need to break those expectations in order for us to be able to make a change or do the work. So I gave that example of the teacher who, sorry for the wrong use of word, but interfered with students to help them, or a clerk who saw a corruption issue and raised that flag, and was but they did that by stepping out of their bounds. So that's what the question was. So I don't know if anybody wants to share.
Yes, so then we have Dr. Nzeribe, who is now a panelist. So yes. So Dr. Nzeribe, if you turn on your camera, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Hello, you're on and we can hear you. Hello. Hi, please go ahead. We can hear you. Can you speak louder?
Okay. Is it better?
So much better. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I was thinking of a situation way back around, that was 2002, 2003, just lost my mom and got into the village setting. I'm female, married out of my particular kindred, and then they came together. Somehow my mom had, influenced them positively. So two different kindreds were quarreling, and then because my mom had died, they all agreed to come together to honor her. So I saw it as a moment to step in and play a mediation role. And then it was a very unlikely thing. One, female, two, married out, three, age-long dispute. But I took it on, and for 3 nights, the men, not even the women, my kindred, the umonna, somebody may explain that me what that means to you. They will gather in front of my father's compound, and then we will take on from 9 p.m. till 1 a.m. teasing out issues. At the end of it, we came to a resolution that began to settle the crisis. So I don't know if it fits what you're referring to.
Yes, and I'd like to just ask you, what made you do that? What drove you?
What drove me? First of all, it's a farming community, and they will always quarrel between January and April. And sometimes people lost their lives. The little resources they had, they will spend it on police and going to court. So I just thought that they were hurting themselves. And I thought using that opportunity, wherein they were agreed on a particular theme, the burial of one of their wives. So I stepped up. I said that my mother's daughter, if you're honoring her, then you just have to honor what I have to tell you. You fought for too long, and we don't even know what the cause is, but whatever the cause is. So for 3 nights, people will stay their positions and all, and we just that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Agatha. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing. Thank you. I think I'm going to reflect just a little bit on what Agatha told us, and also I also see some examples also in the comments about I think it's Cheria saying that about serving others under you, and another initiative where someone went out of their way to kind of do a podcast and such. And I think I want to go back to what Agatha, and I hope you allow me to call you Agatha.
Please do.
Oh, thank you. Like, I mean, it's about having, it's about taking that risk because something is worth it. Like you care about something, like you want to do this change because you see it as important, you care about it. It's about the work. So to put it very simply is that when you take that risk and you're willing to step outside of those bounds, it means you're focused on the work. So what you're doing is like you're putting the work ahead of yourself, because what you're doing is that you're risking your status, for example, like in that job, in that role, whatever it may be. So Agatha, for example, by coming out and doing something that was contrary to a role that she should have played, what she was ultimately doing was risking her status in that family. Like who knows what could have happened or how they could have seen her. So she was risking the current status, like she would have had that in that family, as whatever she was seen as. And I think there, I apologize for mispronouncing your name, but Adeswa, sorry, I'm really terrible at mispronouncing names, so forgive me. She, you know, when she stepped out, when she felt that that's what the work needed, yet she was risking, you know, her relationship with her colleagues, or her colleagues viewed her. So once you're kind of taking that risk and doing that, what you're essentially doing is saying that it doesn't matter about me or what I'm risking or what this may be. This is about the work. So that's why I go back to what I was sharing earlier, and I'm going back to my slides again, where leadership is, again, it's not a practice, it's not a position, it's not that. Leadership is about the work. So then how we define leadership is that it's a practice. You can do it with authority, or you can do it without authority. It's about mobilizing people, similar to what Agatha was doing, and building their capacity to make progress on challenges. And this is why it's really interesting to kind of look at it as this is what the work needs, and that's how we should be looking at it. And I'll give another example as well in my own family, who poor them, I'm always using them as examples. I remember one time we were, yes, please go ahead.
Adesua is a panelist now, if you want to hear from her.
Oh, sure, please go right ahead. I'll stop this so we can see you. So please go ahead. My apologies.
Adesua, you can put on your camera so we can see you now, or you can speak. I think you're muted, Adesua.
Okay, yeah, I'm not in a good place to turn on my camera, but yes, I can be audible. Hello?
Yes, please
Okay,
go
that's
ahead.
fine. You can go ahead.
Okay. So sometimes taking leadership roles come with a lot of risk, like you said, because of the experience I shared. I decided, okay, I did this show and I wanted more listening on the podcast. So I felt, let me do a little recording just to sponsor that and make people anticipate the whole episode. But it put me in the wrong light with my colleagues because they thought, why are you trying to make the rest of us look lazy? That.
Yeah. And it's and why did you talk to your colleagues more to understand why they said that to you?
Yeah, because to them it wasn't their job. The job is to just record the podcast and get out. But I thought, well, I recorded this podcast. I want more people to be able to listen to it. I think it's a brilliant one. I want, people to anticipate it. So I thought maybe it was me taking the extra step to just make sure that my work was good.
Got it. Thanks, Adeswa. Could you tell me how to pronounce your name again?
Adeshawa.
Adeswa. I'm going to actually save your example for another concept that's coming up. So I want to address some of what you said, which I think is really critical, just in another concept that's coming up. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to get back to your example. Thank you. I'm going to now go back to the screen here. So before we kind of move on to the next concept, I wanted to share just a quick personal story to drive this message home that we just talked about together. So in my family, even though, like, as I've said, we were from Somalia, but a lot of us have migrated to Canada, and now we're living in Canada with my mom, my parents, and my grandmother is there as well. And I remember one day I came home and we're all sitting around the kitchen table, and it was my mother, my uncle, who's my grandmother's firstborn, my grandmother, my sister, my elder sister, who's a doctor, myself, and my youngest sister, who was, I think, only 16 years old at the time. And she's the youngest of 9. So it was the 6 of us around the table, and my grandmother has been ill, and she has, medication to take for her blood pressure and all of these types of medications that she's taken on as she's getting older. But my grandmother hates Western medicine and refuses. She hates seeing doctors. She hates getting, any kind of checkup. She hates taking medication. And I think she just has a lack of trust, I guess, for the best way of putting it, for Western medicine. And so she says she takes her medicine, but I think a lot of us just kind of know she's not really regular about it. So that day, as we were sitting around that table, my mom just, asked my grandmother, did you take your medicine this morning? Did you need anything else? And then my grandmother said, yes, I took it. And then, they moved on a little bit in the conversation. And then my younger sister interrupted, looked right at my grandmother and said, "Grandmother, you are a liar." And that is actually in my culture, and I don't know if your culture is similar, it is a huge deal for this little scrawny 16-year-old girl to look pointedly at my grandmother and call her a liar. And she said, "Grandmother, you are a liar. You are not taking your medication." And as soon as my little sister said that, it opened up the discussion around that table, and allowed my older sister, who's a doctor, to come in and start questioning my grandmother more rigorously. My uncle came in and is like, "Is this true? Are you taking it? Not taking it? Like, what's happening?" So it made the matter like much more serious, because of that, I guess, accusation that came so powerfully from my youngest sister. Now, the reason that I wanted to share this as an example, because a lot of people think like, exercising leadership has to be this big thing that we're doing, but I think we exemplify this in little ways as part of our daily life sometimes. It is good to talk about these types of small examples. But if you look around that table, you'll see my mother was a figure of authority by virtue that this is her house and this is her kitchen. My older sister is an authority figure because she gets that from her expertise as a doctor. And this particular incident had to do with, the medicine not being taken. We have my uncle, who is my grandmother's eldest son. Because of the position granted to him by Somali society, the eldest son usually comes with some form of authority. So we had three people with much more authority sitting around that table than this little 16-year-old girl who I would argue had zero authority. I don't even know why she was sitting at that table, but she took that risk. She went outside the bounds of what's expected of a 16-year-old Somali girl when she's sitting with all these older people, and stepped up because she was taking a risk. She thought my grandmother's health was incredibly important, and she made that the work at the center, and she brought it to that forefront. Now, just exercising leadership doesn't necessarily mean you are fixing the problem yourself, but it sometimes means like you're getting the attention on it that it deserves so that others can come around, or you're mobilizing others around it so they're able to then address that problem. And that's what she was able to do with it. So that's an example of someone who had no authority that was able to come in and exercise that leadership to mobilize people around that problem. Now, and I think this takes us so I wanted to cover two things with you today. One was differentiating leadership and authority. The second one is really looking at the technical versus adaptive work. Now, the reason that this is important, because then it calls for, if exercising leadership is really important and critical and it's hard work, like what kind of things require us to exercise leadership? What are the kind of things that, as I think someone put it in the list, comes with risks? What are the kind of things that we want to take, these types of risks for? And this is where we now need to understand the work, because it is about the work. And in this methodology, we talk about the difference of technical versus adaptive work. And a lot of times what we do is that we confuse technical work, technical problems with adaptive. And I think this is part of the reason why sometimes we're not able to make progress on the problems that we have. So if we look at what technical work is clear. We know what the problem is. So for example, my knee hurts. My problem is my knee. The solution, I go to the doctor because this is something that requires, some kind of expert to look at it, meaning authority. The solution is clear. The doctor might see that it's broken. He mends the knee. He might just see that it's strained. The doctor will give me something else. So it's quite clear. We know what's happening there. Now, adaptive problems are the ones that are more complex in that we don't really know what the problem is yet. Like, so we're still learning to try and understand, okay, what's going on here? We don't even really know what the problem is. So because we don't know what the problem is, we don't also know what the solution is as well. So the solution also requires some kind of learning. And the people then we need to come around that problem is not just authority figures. When it's technical, authority figure is enough. Authority figure can say do, and it gets done. But when it's adaptive, it's not enough to just have authority. We need other people around as well, other stakeholders around, so they're able to help with that problem. So if I take on, like for example, right now we're working with issues of HIV, and I've been working on this issue for the past couple of years in a lot of Southern African countries where this continues to be a problem. Now we look at HIV, some people are still looking at it as a technical issue. It's like, what's the problem? Like take, here's a condom, use it, done. Like it's clear. Or you have PrEP, take these drugs, it'll go away. Or you have, sorry, it's not exactly like that, so please don't quote me. Or you have, or you take medication when you get it so that you stay on. And I think a lot of the times we see the problem is clear. We come up with whatever solution that we think is technical, and then we expect it to go away. But then what if the problem doesn't go away? So if you're trying all these different technical solutions and the problem still persists, here's when it's like, okay, so it must be adaptive then. So if we take that same example of the issue of HIV/AIDS, for example, and we look at it. So what's happening here? Why aren't people wearing condoms? What's going on? Like why does this keep persist? Why aren't people going to go get tested? Why aren't people doing any of this? And this is when you start to try and understand what is happening in this bigger system. So some of the things that we're learning that's coming out of here is that, people don't want to be seen as carrying condoms because that's a cultural taboo. People in the church are told you can't do this. So these issues are not talked about. Married men don't want to carry condoms because they are married. So all of these things start coming through, and we start to understand that, okay, this is not a problem that's technical. This is not a problem that just sits with one individual. There's all of this system around this problem that we need to now understand, what it's not just the health thing. So the health facilities are providing testing or condoms, but what's happening in the schools? What's the role of the teachers in this? What's the role of the parents in this? Could they be talking to their children? What's the role of the society in this? Why are they being so judgmental? What's the role of the culture in this? So in this way, it requires everybody to come together to try to understand this problem. And then in that way, we're then able to put in solutions at that time. So if I go back into this, technical solution, fairly easy. I hurt my leg, I go to doctor, done. Other things that we keep trying to fix, if it's not going away, then it's adaptive. So let's discuss and figure out what's happening here together. And it's the adaptive solutions that do require leadership. It's the adaptive solutions that do require people to take risks, that do require people to exercise leadership so that they're able to bring people around the table. So if I go back to Agatha's initial example she gave us, and forgive me, Agatha, I think I'm going to get your example wrong. But I think if it was just a technical thing about, what happens, post death, or how families are able to discuss, and there was a bunch of rules and everybody followed the rules, tick, 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 we're done. But no, it's an adaptive problem. So what's happening here? People have something to lose. What do we need to understand here? So it's hard. And this is why Agatha thought, okay, I need to bring people together. I need to mobilize people. We need to understand what's happening here. So that we're able to address it. And that's the act that then required leadership for her to be able to bring people around. So this is why it's important to kind of also distinct the difference between technical and adaptive, because technical problems is when we need authorities. Because remember, we talked about the bounds of authority, and it's very clear. Yeah, if all we're dealing with is technical stuff, you would never have to leave those bounds. But because we live in a complex world that gets messy, that is quite complicated. That involves a lot of people. It is going to require us to step out of those bounds from time to time. It is going to require us to be able to take that risk, and exercise leadership by looking at problems in an adaptive way. And I'm going to actually pause here and look at the comments for, okay, great. And then the other thing I wanted to mention here as well is looking at adaptive problems, and what you're trying to do here is bring about change. And a lot of times people say people resist change, and how people don't want to change, but it's not that people resist change. People resist loss. People don't want to lose something. And I think that's what they're fighting against, and that's what they're resisting. And we have to take the time to try and understand this. Otherwise, we'll just be trying to push something that no one's going to accept, which is, as I go back to what I said in the very beginning, which was the very thing I was trying in my own government. And I'll give you another kind of family story here. My father passed away about, I think it's been 2 years now. And again, as I said, I came from a place of, I came from a very large family where we're 9 kids, 2 parents, always lived, and grew up in the same house and such. And my mom was, used to caring for all of these people, feeding all these mouths. And because there were so many of us, and my father, was kind of respected in the community, we always had people coming in and out of our house. My mom was the one who was dealing with meals. She was, the lady of the house, for lack of a better word. And she was taking care of everyone and her children and stuff. But now we're all older. That little girl I told you about who's 16, she's now 25, I think. So we're all older out of the house. We're all kind of, working, doing our thing, living in different countries. And now we've got this, what we see as a problem is this big house with a lot of rooms, and my mom is by herself. So, what do we do about her? As arrogant as we are as children, coming together, talking about her without her. And we're coming up with solutions, and we're talking to our mom. We're like, okay, you should maybe move in with my sister. She has a room. My mom's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want my, she wants her own space. Okay, fine. So that was our first technical fix, just move her into my sister's home. And then we said, okay, fine, but this is too big. Maybe we can, get you an apartment, and you can, a small apartment, you can stay that. And she's like, and again, she's like, no, because what if you guys come back and visit? I want to have a house when you guys come. And then we came up with another technical reason. We're like, oh, it's okay. We can get Airbnb next to you. And we went back and forth on this thing that whatever we threw at our mom, she threw it right back at us. And here, and we're just kept coming up with all these technical reasons. We'll get you an Airbnb, we'll get you a cleaner, we'll move you to the small place, because we just saw this big house and we kind of saw it as a burden for her and such. But we never paused, like, in this whole dialogue to understand that my mother wasn't resisting change. Like, she wasn't resisting the change of, like, going to a new apartment or going to a different country, whatever. She was resisting the loss. And by that, I mean, what does it mean for my mother to lose that house? Like, what does it mean? So if we look behind it, this is a house that, her children grew up in. Like, there's her, it's like her character as an individual, as her something she values, her ability to be the host, like, her whole identity is tied to this person who has this big house where she's able to host people, where she's able to take care of herself, where she's able to, like, still be the person that everyone is coming to, and I think that's very much tied to her identity of being this provider, of being this person who can take care of all of these people, whether the house is empty or not. So what we were really kind of challenging or attacking was not moving her from a big space to a small space, where it's not making sure she's around other people, but we were attacking her identity, as this person who's a problem solver, as this person who hosts, as this person that people come to, as this person who's a provider, as this person, who cares for others. And that's what we were attacking, and that's what she was resisting of losing. So once we understand that it's not about, people resisting change, it's about in this place where, when you want to bring change, when you want to do this, everyone around the system is in a position to lose something, and that's what we need to address. So when I go back to the the example of HIV that I gave you earlier, and how we're working with the different communities to understand what's going on here. So what are they losing if they start to do something about this HIV issue? So if we break that down even further, what it looks like is we are asking people to maybe change certain parts of their culture. We're asking people to change certain parts of, you know, how they show up at a church. We're asking people to think differently about their identity. You know, like, we are a Christian nation. This is who we are. We don't talk about these things. We don't do these things. I'm a parent. I don't talk about this with sex. That's not my culture. So when we kind of understand, we're asking people to give up things about their identities and their values, when we're asking them to shift their behaviors and such, then that loss is very big. And that's the loss that we need to then be able to address if we want to have change. And to address that loss, because it's something that's tied to identity and values and everything, you are going to piss people off. You're going to ruffle feathers. It's going to be hard. And this is why it's a risk and requires, you know, you to be brave, to be able to go outside those bounds, you know, of whatever a culture say, to go outside those bounds of whatever it may say, to be able to kind of take action on these things. And I think this is why it's really difficult to do that and exercise leadership, because these problems are complex and they do require a lot of us in that way. I'm going to go back now to the example that we were given earlier, and please forgive me, but I think I lost your name again. But she gave us the example of the podcast, of coming up with this podcast and making that trailer with her colleagues. And I would ask her, okay, if it was about the work and this will serve the work, why did they resist? Like, what did her colleagues have to lose by resisting? Did she try to understand what was happening here? And part of understanding that could mean, okay, well, if this trailer came out and they weren't involved, do you think they'll be seen as, you know, okay, maybe my job is not as, you know, like, maybe I'm not as good as my job. Maybe I'm inferior in my job, and that's what they're protecting. And this is why they're lashing out, you know, because I wasn't included and this was done. So, or maybe they're resisting it because they, you know, again, because they weren't part of it. So they think it's going to look a certain way in them, or, you know, so whatever it is, I'm just guessing here, but what would have been great if that speaker perhaps could have included them from the very beginning, in the same way we could have included our mom in this discussion. And then what would have been looked like then if she included them in that way? Then it wouldn't have been about, you know, this trailer coming out. They wouldn't have had experienced that loss of, well, people are going to see me as being bad at my job if, you know, because I'm not doing trailers, you know. So a lot of the times it's good to kind of step back and try to see something from someone else's perspective. What does this person have to lose if this happens? You know, how is this person seeing this? Because I'm on the other side of it in a different way. I'm just going to pause for a second and just go through a couple of the comments, if that's okay. And feel free to keep putting in the comments. I'm just going back here to look at it. Yep, and I see some people saying here, yes, leadership comes with risk, especially in African environment. Completely agree. Let me see here. Adaptive challenge takes time and requires a cultural shift. Can corruption be classified as an adaptive challenge? Oh, wow, 100%. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let me see here. Push for gender equity, adaptive challenge, especially because our men. Adora, do you want to come onto the panel a bit and just kind of say a little bit more about your comment on gender equity as well as corruption? Can I invite you to the panel for a little bit? I'm going to stop sharing for a bit. Let me see here. Adora, you on mute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So my question or my thoughts around gender, because of course this is a leadership for women's program, and we know that leadership, it's in its very nature gendered, and also because we are living in a patriarchy here in Nigeria and mostly in Africa. So I'm thinking this, in this respect, it is an adaptive challenge, isn't it? The quest for gender equity in any form. And you've just talked about how people feel like they're losing something. And it is possible that men and women maybe feel a sense of loss in that regard. So, I mean, some of my thoughts are around, what does it look like pushing for an adaptive challenge, like pushing for gender equity?
Yeah.
And how can we address this loss that people are feeling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm not equipped to answer it. But I'll try my best. But I think it'll be great to also hear in your comments what you think as I attempt to answer that question. And I think it's really great to raise that, especially as a great example between technical and adaptive, because if gender equity was able to be resolved by technical means, it would have been already done, because there's, I don't know about your country, but in my country, in Canada and other countries, there's laws in place that do talk about gender equity. There's laws in place that talk about men and women being equal. There's laws in place protecting employment. There's all sorts of laws and rules in place that do this already. So that's the technical part of it. Like we put in laws, or we have these quotas sometimes as well that I've seen, this needs to be 50% women, or this needs to be this. So when you try to address, an issue, a complex issue such as gender equity with technical means, that's what you end up with, things like quotas, things like laws, things like this. And it's not to say these things aren't important. So the technical is also incredibly important. So you need both. So you need the technical end, just like you need condoms as well. So on the technical end, we need those laws, we need these quotas, we need these things in place. But then now we have to address the adaptive part, because now it's like, we put in these laws, we put in these quotas, but things still aren't moving. So what's happening? So, and that's part of it, and that part we call diagnostic. And this is when we need to understand the system, what is happening in the system. And you may have heard this before, but we say, systems aren't broken. They're built and they work exactly as they should, because they are serving certain people, and we do see that quite a bit. So it's not like, so let's understand the system and what's happening around it. What's the men's, as Dora mentioned rightly, there are people who are going to lose some things, if this happens, so we're looking at, men may perhaps lose positions, or what happens to the household, like who's in the family, who's going to, because there's so much unseen work that a woman carries as well, right? Like that we don't put as much value in. So all of these things come about that we need to start looking at and treat, and what it looks like to treat this challenge and adaptive rather than technical is, one, we move it from the realm of authority. Like, authorities are important, but we need to create that space to bring more actors in. So if we look at let me see if I can use my little pen again. Let me share. Close. Whiteboard. Okay, perfect. All right, I think I'm great. So if we look at the issue here and we call it, a gender equity or something, my beautiful handwriting to really get that fixed at some point. And then, so now it's about, well, who's involved in this? Like for now, we've just given it to whatever authority there was that had rules, laws, just didn't work. But who else should be around the table? Obviously, we have women, that care about this and they should be around the table, but there's also men. Men need to be in this picture, like in that way represented. So it's hard to address this without men into place. Like we do need, government involved in this. We need, who else would we need? And, and depending on what the problem is, it just requires like all the actors to come around it. And within women, we're going to have many different factions. We're going to have those that are pro for this. We're going to have those are like, that have a different reason. We need, from a cultural perspective, we might need the churches involved, because, there's views coming from there as well that do have an impact on gender equity. Like, I don't know how things works in Nigeria, but in Somalia, we have like traditional leaders. We need them involved as well, because there's certain views that have been said about women that they're involved in. So it's not about erasing culture. It's not about erasing what religion has said. It's not about, not listening to men or putting down government. Everybody is part of this problem. And if everybody has contributed to this problem, then everybody has a part in that solution as well. So what it looks like is how do we mobilize, and this is the act of leadership, how do we mobilize all of these different stakeholders and factions to start having a dialogue and a conversation on this issue? So what would it look like if the church sat together with women, with men, with teachers, and they had a discussion around, okay, how do we see women's role? Like, what's going on here? What are the issues that we need to deal with? Like, is it gender-based violence? Is it just women at boards? Is it just, and it's going to look different. So, and I think this is the other thing that you'll anticipate too. The way the problem is even framed is going to look so different depending who you talk to. So this is why it's important to get all the different perspectives around the table, not just on the solution, but also on how they see the problem, what their perspective is. So, and people are going to tell you different things. So the first step is to get everybody around that table and have that dialogue so you can uncover and actually have a diagnostic to understand what's going on. So I'm going to stop sharing. Great. What do you think, Adora? Or others that are putting there as well? Yeah, and I think someone said an interesting question, Adora. I think men view loss in this context as losing authority from women. Yeah. And I think, yeah. And I think it's important that we actually also understand, what is it that men are thinking? Because men are also not like monolithic. There's different views in there as well. So what is the loss for them? It may not just be that, like, we may just assume that their loss is like they're going to lose authority because women are going to take, but there might be other things too. Maybe they're afraid they're going to lose, their standing as men. They're like, okay, well, if I can't offer this and we're equal, what do I have to offer now? You know what I mean? Like, maybe they're protecting whatever it means to be a man. And then the work becomes about redefining what it means to be a man so that we can create space for women. But we're only going to know that if we're able to actually bring more people to the table so we can understand, what the actual problem is and what these things look like. Okay, I'm just going to bring back my PowerPoint again, see what we covered. So I think this goes to what we're saying here in terms of then the essential question of adaptive work becomes about, what parts of our cultural DNA do we keep? And what parts of it do we need to discard so we can change? And how do we innovate so that we're able to thrive in this environment? So adaptive leadership is not about getting rid of everything. And that's why when we're talking about that gender equity remark, it's like, no, we're not saying all the men need to now sit down. We're not saying that, parts of our culture needs to change, our religion needs to change. No, it's because these things have served us for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like, we shouldn't be discarding them so quickly. So we need to understand, what are these things that we want to keep? What are the things then collectively as a group we decide, okay, we can incur the loss of that and then innovate so that we're able to do it. We can only do these things if we're doing them together. The other point that I wanted to bring up is, so if we know that we need to do adaptive work, and we know that it's complex and it might be the right thing to do, and we're trying to solve really hard problems, why don't we do it? Like, what happens? How do people, avoid doing it? And part of it is this, really wonky looking map that I wanted to explain. And this really looks at, how does change happen? So if we're looking at this map that we have here, what we're saying is that in order for change to happen, we need to have these difficult discussions, and we need to bring people together. We need to have this dialogue, similar to what Agatha was doing earlier with her family and bringing them together in that way. And I'm sure Agatha didn't mention, but I'm sure it was a very tough discussion. I'm sure it wasn't easy. Like there was maybe some people were heated, some people weren't. But what we say is that at the point where adaptive work is happening is at the point where we have this productive range of stress. So we want to be able to like push people into that space. And that space is an uncomfortable space. That is a space of discomfort, because that's a space where you're challenging ideas, where you're challenging people's values, you're having conversations that are pushing people to actually say what they're thinking and feeling on the table. So it's a really heated discussion. And I think of it a bit like a pressure cooker in a way, right? In your pressure cooker, you're putting in like all the vegetables, onions, carrots, whatever, and that can represent the different stakeholders as such. You want all these varying feuds, and you want to apply enough pressure or heat so that it is productive. You are getting people to come to the table and speak, and not just, push it away with like a technical fix. But you don't want it so hot. See the orange line where we reach the limits of people and they give up, and it kind of like all falls apart in a way. And you don't want to also stay below, because what happens is that when you stay below this productive range that requires difficulty, that requires you to be in discomfort, that requires you to, to address issues head on, in order to avoid that and come below this range, this is where we say work avoidance is happening. And work avoidance looks like many different ways. Like there's this running joke about what's the fastest way to kill an initiative or project is, put a committee on it, like in a way of work avoiding. Work avoiding also looks like making this the issue of authority. No, I can't do something. This is the boss. The boss has to deal with this. So you immediately come out from it. And again, people avoid this because it is heated, it is discomfort, it is something that you need to keep going at. But then people avoid that work because they don't want to be at that place of discomfort all the time. And that's the place that, and we need to keep people. And this is why I said it's very hard to go outside those bounds, because once you go outside those bounds, you're in that range of discomfort, where it's not just you who's taking the risk, but you're also making other people uncomfortable. But unfortunately, like that's what's necessary in order for us to be able to do that work. Go here. So again, so people would avoid the work because they don't want to have losses, whether they're real or whether they're perceived. And sometimes these losses are perceived. Or they avoid the work because they'll put that responsibility or attention on something else. Or let's not deal with it. Or they'll bring a technical solution that would just shut things down. And an example that I would think of is, in the United States, for example, right after the civil rights movement with all the protests and such, they revised the laws to allow, African Americans to vote and stuff. Law has been revised. Okay, technical fix, let's move on. But we know what happened. We know that, this issue of race was never fixed because it was never tackled on. And we had just a lot of technical fixes that people brought into place, but was never really addressing the issue in the way that it should be. So either pushing an issue up to the authorities to deal with, not mine, it's yours, is also another way of avoiding that, or blaming others. Like I'm guilty of this as well. Sometimes I'm like, oh, these African leaders, like, so sometimes, like kind of like pushing it out like elsewhere because, you don't want to, have part in it. That's another way, like, you're just attacking the authority. This is not it. It's them. So there's many ways of trying to avoid that discomfort. So I'm going to pause here again and ask you to take another minute to kind of think of an example in your life or something where you felt like a problem was, dealt with in a technical way rather than, it being the adaptive that it was required, that it was shut down because, they just came up with a list of rules, now we're fine, or no, it's okay, we'll put a Band-Aid on it, or whatever that it may be. If you want to take some time and just kind of think about that, and then we'll just ask people to share their examples. So I'm just going to pause again while we do that for just a minute. Thank you. Okay, great. If we're ready for panelists, let's take them. Yeah. So the question was if you can think of a time where you were faced with a problem that, that was addressed technically rather than adaptively, meaning, a quick solution that didn't work when really the problem was much bigger than that. I think that would be the question. Sorry, can you pronounce it? Is it Eme or Emi?
Okay, Eme. Eme.
Eme? Eme. Sorry,
Yes, Eme.
I need to get better at this. Eme.
Okay. Hello, Hartman. Thank you so far for everything you've shared with us. From my understanding, what the question you're asking is for me to give an example of when I've had to play the role in adaptive leadership. Am I right?
Yeah, just when,
This is very personal example. Okay. This is a very personal example. I lost my father-in-law maybe almost 3 years ago, and he was living with us at the time. This is my husband's father. And all of a sudden we noticed, he was a bit ill, and we took him to the hospital, and then we found out that he had leukemia, and it was quite advanced. And he died in the space of 10 days. So it was quite a huge shock for my husband. First of all, for the diagnosis, because he lost his mother a year before. So that was the reason why his father came to live with us in the first place. So he was still mourning his mother. And then he gets this news that his father is, probably not going to make it because it was quite advanced, and his father was quite advanced in age as well. So I literally saw my husband shut down. He couldn't function properly, even to go see his father in the hospital. It was difficult for him to see his father suffering, to see his father dying. So I would always, he wasn't my father, he was my father-in-law. So I had to just take that role up. I had to be there. He needed a lot of blood transfusion. He needed this, he needed that. And my husband mentally, he couldn't, and I had to take up that role, and I was the one liaising more or less with the doctors. Oh, how do we get a donor for this and that? Eventually, anyway, he passed after maybe about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And when he passed, the day he passed in the afternoon, I was there with him and my husband was there. My husband just left the hospital. He could, it was the final shock for him. So he couldn't function. He wasn't even there. He couldn't even sign the death certificate. He wasn't himself. So I saw myself having to, take the role of, this is my father, let me do this, and up to escorting his body to the morgue, signing the death certificate, liaising with the doctors, making all the arrangements, up to going to pick the coffin. My husband was a complete and total mess, so I can relate with this, and sometimes people, they found it a bit strange. They said, what happened to Roland? Where is Roland? Up to the point that my husband couldn't even tell people his father died. So I had to be the one liaising with the printers, doing everything, inviting people to the funeral, even speaking at the funeral, So, and I think that is, women are really wonderful. I think it's just an innate gift we have to just get up and filling the gap when necessary. And I typed something in the chat, something relating to perception. We're talking about this thing of resistance to adaptive leadership. And I think a huge part, we owe a huge part of this to perception, especially in our African societies. It is perceived that the men take up the leadership role, in certain situations, in most situations. And then it looks strange when a woman has to now come in and take up this role. But I think what clears the way for this perception and reduces this challenge is when what the end result is. Did the job get done, at the end of the day? And this goes for all the women in positions of authority. That initial reaction of people like, oh, she's a woman, can you do the job? And once you prove that, you can do the job, and you can even do the job better than what they have thought. I think it really, opens up to so many opportunities and creates this atmosphere of acceptance at the end of the day. And people kind of overcome their biases and say, it's not about being a woman. It's about, can you do the job? Can you get this thing done? So that is my own personal experience. One of them anyway.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. I think that's a really difficult thing for someone to go through. I think part of what I was thinking of as you were sharing that was what an extreme situation that was for you and your husband, like losing his father in that way, and you have stepped up. So it has to be for you to step up because the how that was and how that problem was and the urgency around that problem was. And I'd love to just kind of shift that a bit and kind of take it back to what we were talking about, whether it was corruption or whether it was gender equity, and how do we create that similar urgency around that problem and then enable us to then be able to like step up, right? And by that I mean, like, part of the work sometimes is the work of adaptive leadership or the work of working on these adaptive problems is very long. Like, they take a very long time to take. And part of it is like step 1 or step 2, step 3, about how do we create urgency around this? How do we ripen the issue? How do we get people to actually see this as a problem that allows more people to like step up? So if I could link what you said and what you were saying about, part of our work in the beginning is to show that this is actually a problem, because not a lot of people even think it's a problem. So how do we first show this is a problem, and then after that show this is actually something urgent that we need to work on right now, which is why we need to get everyone around it quite quickly. So I don't mean to take away at all from the really personal example you gave us, but I wanted to highlight how in that particular example, it was very evident to everyone, this is a serious problem. And then the urgency was created. So if we take that as a way of, okay, the kind of problems we want to work on, whether it's gender equity, whether it's corruption, how do we do the same thing in showing, A, does everybody even think it's a problem? If not, how do we get everyone to recognize that this is a problem? And then 2, how do we not get the urgency around it so that people would want to step up? So it helps us think about, the kind of environment that needs to be in place so that we can get people to step up in the same way that you did. Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm sorry for your husband's loss and your loss.
Thank you, Rhoda. Oh, thank you. No problem. Thank you.
And then we had another panelist.
Yes, we do. We have Ify. Ify, are you going to turn on your camera?
Hi, I'm trying to. It's really, really bright, so I'm just going to be shining all my light to you guys. I think if you can hear me, though, I probably just start speaking.
We can hear you.
I'm still trying to work this thing out. Hi, Holden. Thank you so much. This has been a really productive lecture. I'm really gaining a lot, and I really love how you put up the slide where it was explaining what adaptive and technical problems. I think the major problem with a lot of this is that people keep treating adaptive problems as technical problems. I'll just give an example of what mine is. It's a bit personal, but now it's bigger than me in the sense. So I have a younger sister that is autistic, and I'm her legal guardian now. And I've been her legal guardian since 2014. When I moved back to Nigeria in 2017, most of it was to come to Nigeria to take care of her. And I just focused a lot of my trainings I'm a lawyer, outside of my legal practice into special needs, mainly to take care of her, because I just thought, she's my younger sister. I'm going to be her future caregiver, and I'm going to take care of her. When I moved to Nigeria, I realized there were so many families that did not understand what it means for people to be legal guardians. So what their siblings would be, what the other family members would be in the family, what kind of help they could provide, what kind of solution the society could provide for them. And it became an even bigger problem besides my sister. And I realized people were seeing this problem now with your own example. People were seeing this as a technical problem. Oh, this only happens to you. You should only care about this because it's in your family. So people were being ignorant about that fact that this could happen to anybody. And you need to even be, you should be able to move out of that ignorance factor and even understand what this is, not just for autism, for any kind of special needs, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome. And so it's become a big issue. And I stepped up and I formed an organization that now caters to siblings of people with special needs to be able to train other siblings like myself that did not get that information growing up or did not get the resources growing up, for them to be able to now liaise with. We're in contact with about 24 countries, and these resources are already there. You have a lot of countries like people in the United States and in Canada that have organizations that now make legislations to help these families, whereas you have African countries that still see these things as stigmas and taboo, and there's a whole lot of drama around that and still are not looking for solutions, whereas you have families that day to day are still giving birth to children that have one disability or the other and have very, very, very zero information on how to cater to these things. So for me now, with the organization, we're trying to get to that place where we get more people to understand why they should be aware of this thing, why they should be informed, and why they should understand what it is that is going on. My law firm now has a section that takes care of persons with special needs, their legal documentation, legal guardianship, legal ethics, and it's a lot to carry on. When I started it, honestly, I started it because of my sister, and now it's a whole, it's bigger than us, and it's getting to that point now where you're looking for collaborations, you're looking for people to come in because you can handle it, but still, you still have so many people that are asking you, why are you doing this thing? It's not an African thing. It's, we don't understand it. Why should you be training siblings? And I'm like, they're the caregivers. What are they going to do when their parents die in 20 years, in 10 years, and they don't know how to cater to their siblings that have one special needs or the other? You need to prepare them beforehand. So really, I don't know how all the countries take care of problem, but I think in Nigeria, we have a big issue with just seeing everything too technical. We're not that open-minded to seeing the problems in a different place or bringing in the right stakeholders that can handle certain problems. We're so fixated on it just being, something that they can just sweep under the carpet. So for me, I'm still learning, and this lecture is just giving me a whole lot. I'm really grateful for this. So thank you.
Great. No, thank you so much for sharing your personal story and your example. And you're absolutely right. It is an adaptive challenge. And I think part of what I'm hearing you saying as well is it's also like the framing, like how we frame this problem too. So if we're framing this problem of young people with autism or with any other disability as like, oh, we need to help them, or we need to take care of them, it kind of takes away the problem from being something that's like shared among everybody, because I think this is something that is shared by everyone in society, and kind of just puts it just solely on the shoulders of these families and these people with disabilities that we kind of almost victimize, which makes it easier for us to kind of like move away and shun. But if we frame it and look at it more so that these are members that could be contributing to the society, right? Like this is it's so interesting because right before this I was on a call with this woman who was doing this tech fund, and it's called assisted tech, and it's mainly looking at how do we improve technology for people with disabilities. And the way she was approaching it was mainly about, no, these are people that are part of a market. We need them, like we need them on the economies. We need them to be contributing members of society, because in that way, we just shut off a part of our society from being productive. Like we shut off a part of our society that could be contributing in all of that we may potentially need, so in that way, like by removing them from everyone else and just seeing them as like, oh, these are people who need help, and not looking at, no, as a society, as Nigeria, how do we make sure that we're not shutting down this segment of population, because we actually need them. They're continuing members. Our economy needs them. We can't, we can't shut them off in that way, from all these different aspects. And then also, how do we look at it? How do we, remember when we're talking about the bonds and the roles, how do we get teachers to see that, no, this is also part of your role? Or how do we see all these other aspects side to see no, actually, this is also part and parcel of the role. So for this thing, and I think this is where it becomes adaptive, because it's about shifting the way, the framing of how we see this. And it's also, and to do that, we need to shift the mindsets of people when it comes to these things. So how do we begin to do that? And the only way we begin to do that is by kind of bringing in more people into this that can claim this as their problem as well. That can claim this as their problem and can then see themselves in that solution too. And that is going to require bringing in different stakeholders into this. So what would it look like if this conversation shifts from a disability conversation, but maybe shifts into equity in education? Or shifts to become about equity in the workforce, or shifts, do you know what I mean? So it's kind of looking at it and opening up this so that it invites more of the stakeholders to come in, and it doesn't, and it stops being about, oh, it's charity and we're helping, these guys, because I agree with you, it is much more than that. But to do that, we need to open it up and kind of bring more people into that conversation. But thank you so much for sharing, Effie. I think I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to just go through my last couple of slides here. And again, I just wanted to leave you with a couple more things. One is exactly just where we started, that leadership, it's a practice. You don't need to be in a position of authority to do it. You need to mobilize people around this, because it's not something that you can do alone. And it's about making progress on it over time. It's rare that you're just going to solve an adaptive challenge right away and it goes away. Because of the nature, it's all about how do we, make continuous progress on this thing. And that's what it's about. And again, once we start to think about leadership in this way, it stops just being about, only people with authority, or men with authority, or women just, can only do stuff once we get into authority position, but it opens up for the space for others to step up and act and be able to then practice leadership. And finally, I'll just leave you with this kind of 8 strategic tasks about how to exercise leadership and to kind of do this work. The first one's about getting on the balcony, and this is really a metaphor, and what it's referring to is, a lot of the times, if we're on the dance floor, and we're there and we're just having a good time, we're only aware of ourselves or just our friends, and that's it. So, but we don't know what's happening in the bigger picture. But then we step out of that dance where we get on the balcony, and then we're able to actually look down and see, oh, the DJ booth is over there. There's a group of people there fighting. Those people are not dancing. We start to see everything else that's happening on that dance floor, and it gives us a much bigger picture of what's actually going on. So it's part of how we're doing a diagnostic. We need to be in the action so that we can take steps to do stuff, but then we need to also step out and get on the balcony and reflect on the actions that we just took. Well, how did everyone see it? How was it received? What's going on in the larger picture? So that's a kind of a diagnostic method that I want you to try and take on. You could be in a meeting, sitting down, pay attention to what's happening. Who's speaking the most, who's not speaking, who talks first, or things are you finding yourself always in a particular dynamic with a person? You're going back and forth, why are you doing that? So just step back and try and understand what's happening in the room, because nothing's ever personal. There's always so much systemic stuff that's happening. So this person that's talking to me, they might be representing something else altogether. So it's really good to just take a pause and try and see what's happening in the room around you. What's going on? You enter a meeting 5 minutes early, try and pay attention. What's happening in the first 5 minutes? who's sitting with who, what's going on. It just gives you an idea of like what's going on, beyond it. And that's one of the diagnostic tools that we talk about. And diagnostic is really important. So to get an adaptive challenge, to understand it, we need to diagnose it. We need to understand what's going on here. So similar to that example I gave of my mother, where we thought, oh, it's just about moving locations, but it was really something that was definitely tied to her identity that she might be losing. So we need to know what other stakeholders are involved in here. What do they have to lose? So let's try to understand what this challenge, how is the challenge being framed? We just talked about that, about how you frame this problem of people with disability in a society. And then once I'm able to kind of frame that problem or challenge, how do I keep attention on this? And that was important. Remember that chart that I showed earlier about, that productive range and it being a discomfort to stay in that productive range. So how do I keep people in that space so we can keep the work going? And number 4 is about giving the work back to people. And that's really about, you can't do everything on your own. The problem belongs to the people who are facing it in a way. So as a consultant, I can't do the work for you. Or even yourself with your sister, it's amazing that you're involved in doing that. But then how do you share this work? How do you give this? So if it's a change that you're trying to do in the schools, how do you give this work to the schools so that they're also doing this work and it's not just on you? So those are things that we need to look at and try and understand. And number 5 that I completely failed at during my time in Somalia, about building trust, that was the most important thing. I wish I spent 2 years on nothing but just trying to build trust between people. And that would have taken us much further than any project plan could have ever taken us. And number 6, about regulating distress, which again, I just talked about earlier, about that graph. That's the disequilibrium. It's as when you're practicing leadership, it's like, how do you manage that so people aren't going above their threshold of tolerance and aren't avoiding work as well. And part of it is also trying to get more leadership. So if you're exercising leadership, how do you get more people to exercise leadership along with you? How do you teach people to do that and build their capacity to be able to do that as well, so that you're not alone in this work? And finally, number 8, which is my favorite, is infusing work in the meaning, infusing the work with meaning, which goes down to like why we care, and making sure that people also understand why we care about these things. And I think you guys brought this up much earlier in the comments above, when I was talking about why would you go beyond the bounds of your authority, and it is about something you feel like you're serving others, is something you care about, is for a greater cause, what I mean, whatever it may be, the work that you're doing. So when you're practicing leadership, it is about work that has meaning, and then people also have to understand what that meaning is, and people need to, and that's the way to be able to kind of mobilize. People asking about how do you mobilize people, they need to share in that understanding of the meaning the work holds. So if I go back to the last person, Effie, who spoke, maybe your first job is to kind of get people to understand what these means and why they should care about it. And kind of like, building that up so people understand, oh, this is what it's about. That's why it's important. This is why we should all care, not just the people with disabilities, how it affects us all. So infusing work with meaning is also a really important step to take. And that was, I think that's it for my slides. So I'd like to, again, thank you guys so much for this opportunity. I'm seeing the comments there. Thank you to all who have been going through and commenting, and also to those that were summing up the points as well. I really appreciated that. So I just kind of like leave you with saying just a couple of things of like, leadership is an activity open to everyone. Anyone can practice it. Different from authority, which is a position. And sometimes we need to kind of go beyond that bounds to be able to exercise leadership. And we do that because the work is important. We care about the work. It's adaptive, which means there's no quick fix. And we need to understand, what the challenge is in order for us to kind of get people around it. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for giving me this time and for listening to me and participating.
Since I'm the only one that's unmuted, this is on behalf of everybody who's listened. Thank you so much, Hodan. This is an amazing, amazing session that you've just had with us. A massive round of applause from everyone here, which I will deliver to you. Thank you for your time. There were so many key points and takeaways that I don't know where to start. So I think everybody that has been here has taken away a lot. And people asking, yes, the materials will be shared with you after the session. You registered. If you registered and we have your email address, you will receive the materials and the course slides and the recording of this session. Thank you so much, Hodan. Please stick around with us. If you think that was interesting, we're literally just getting started for today. We have our Power First session that we've just concluded, and we have another Power session coming up in a few minutes. This is exactly the kind of conversation and energy that we aim to generate at WLI. We've only just started. Thank you. Keep your comments coming, keep your questions coming, and continue to contribute in the chat room. Before we go on to the next session, our founder has joined us, so we'll take our well, it was supposed to be a welcome address, and she wasn't here in the beginning to welcome us, but we'll pass it on now to Ambassador Dr. Kema Chikwe to speak with us for a few minutes before we go into our next session. I think you're still muted.
Yes, you're on mute.
Okay, remove this. So I'm unmuted.
Yes, we
Thank
can
you.
hear you now, but
Well,
we can't
actually,
hear you yet.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. This was supposed to be an opening remark, but unfortunately, we had a very terrible technical problem. But I also remember that this webinar is about adaptive leadership. So we had to adapt and meet up with the challenges. I'm as excited about this course as I am in welcoming all of you. What's going on now? You can hear me?
We can hear you, and now we can see you.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm very excited to welcome everybody, all the participants, the panelists, the organizers, and directors, as well as the crew of the Women Leadership Institute. Welcome, everyone. The theme of the course today is adaptive leadership, styles and skills in a changing world. Well, Hodan has done, I don't know what to say, but I hope Hodan will remain a partner to WLI because she has done wonderful service to this webinar in discussing adaptive leadership styles and skills in a changing world. This course could not have come at a better time than now. When the coronavirus pandemic has traumatized the entire humanity and is creating a new outlook about life. and how the present and the future can be assured of a revival and sustenance of the realities we face to recreate a better world. And we have heard so much from Hudan, and I think we are moving towards that. Adaptive leadership is not really a new intellectual concept. It has been there to an extent. It really means that organizations, communities, teams, and groups need to continuously adapt their interventions as they learn more about the outcomes and realities of this changing world. Leadership is defined as the art of motivating a group of people to act towards achieving a common goal. And there's something Hudan said that I liked about leadership and authority. You're either giving the authority or you take the authority yourself. And that is very significant. Clearly, leadership is critical to adjusting to the changes of the times. I get very excited when I encounter or read about organizations, NGOs, and groups who organize programs about leadership. No doubt, here in Africa, it is generally accepted that leadership is the cause of all the problems that retard our development. The leadership campaign in Africa, especially in Nigeria, has become a household cliche. But obviously, the impact has not been really felt the way it should be. The evidence is that Nigeria ranks low in developmental indices. The gender equality mainstreaming and recognition campaign since the 1975 Beijing conference has generated an upbeat consciousness that the continent of Africa and our Nigeria will fare better in development if women were to get involved more than they are getting involved now. It will be important for women, or more women, to get into positions of authority here in Nigeria, in Africa, and globally. Yeah, the Women Leadership Institute, founded in 2017, we believe that women can make a lot of difference when they are in positions of authority. For us at WLI, it is time to narrow down to a more impactful agenda. We have initiated this course on adaptive leadership because we believe that we have to narrow down to specific agenda. It is our aim to raise or train a critical mass of women in Africa, in Nigeria in particular, to be in the leadership at every level. They are supposed to lead with the efforts that have been made so far. A lot has been said. Therefore, women should be in the forefront. Adaptive leadership is sensitive to sociocultural environment and also professionalism and expertise of diverse nature. This program, this course, has been put together by a very strong team. Ms. Sumachi Kechuku, who is the Director of Programs at the Women Leadership Institute, Adora Ugu, and Tochukwu Okasimwozo, who are on the board of the Institute, and Ms. Wura Tunde Andrews, a member of the faculty of WLI. Incidentally, Professor Akusin, who will be speaking next, and is a panelist today, is also a member of the board as well as member of the WLI faculty. Here at the Women Leadership Institute, we believe that we are blazing a trail. We have started a conversation. We have started this narrative on adaptive leadership, and we know it's going to be adopted by organizations, NGOs, and really it will make an impact in the very near future. We are not only intellectual at the Institute, we are also practical. And from the lectures you listen to, you understand that we combine both intellectualism and practicality. We have organized about 7 masterclasses, 6 webinars, organized orientation courses for corporate organizations, and established a very vibrant alumni association. The course today is coming in straight from Hudan of Harvard and young women who have been to the best universities in the world. And we are introducing a new direction. And I hope that Women Leadership Institute will continue to partner with everybody who has registered for this program and who will experience what comes out of the Institute. We give you the best always. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, Ambassador Chikwe. Thank you especially, thank you. I can hear people clapping. Thank you especially for the vision and the leadership that you provide for this institute. It's clear that the impact that the institute is making on the lives of women through the seminars, the master classes, and the sharing of such valuable learning resources is really impactful and helpful. I think I speak on behalf of everyone here when I say that we're honored to be in the room, and we're happy that such a platform exists. And it is our hope that the WLI will continue to get the support that we've received so far and continue to make an impact across Nigeria and across Africa. Thank you so much, Ma. So we'll shift gears a little bit now and quickly go into our next session. The next course that we have for you is called Women Entrepreneurship Leadership Lessons. Now, in this session, we're going to deliver real practical lessons and skills that women on the entrepreneurship journey can begin to use right now. Our next trainer, our next lecturer coming up is a very dear friend of the Institute, like our founder has said, Professor Seth Ackerson. He's also Harvard trained. He's a seasoned professor. He's currently professor of entrepreneurship, and his experience spans over 3 decades. Yes, 3 decades. That's how much experience we're bringing into the room right now. He holds a PhD in economics from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, where he taught for over a decade. Professor Atkinson is a chartered stockbroker. He's also a British Council accredited trainer and panelist. He has worn many, many hats over the last 20 years. Professor, lecturer, scholar, external examiner, writer, advisor, trainer, consultant, many more, with many distinguished honors and awards. Please visit our website so you can learn more about Professor Atkinson and his incredible journey, and give a warm, warm welcome to our next lecturer, Professor Seth Atkinson. Welcome, sir. And the floor is now yours.
Me around as an old teacher, but not as old as Mama. Let me appreciate the ambassador for always counting on me, and we are looking up to her. She's been an inspiration and she's been a motivator. We are challenged by her doggedness, by her capacity to mobilize and to deliver results. She's been a model, and we continue to appreciate her. And for the coordinator, Wura, we thank you for the brilliant coordination so far. We've been here for more than 2 hours now, and it's been wonderful. We've just shared about on an adaptive leadership style. So wonderful. We were carried away. We couldn't even imagine that we spent 2 hours on the team. So here we are briefly, we'll be looking at some lessons on leadership for women. We call it Women Entrepreneurship Leadership Lesson. There are things we've been doing with WLI in Lagos, in Owerri, in Abuja, and some other places like that. We'll just flesh it up and try to improve on it. Some of us have been part of what we've been doing, and we'll continue to do more. So the adaptive leadership is now going to serve as maybe one of our flagships programs that will be replicating here and there. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Also, I have some of my students and some of the people that I expected that they should join. Ura, let me seek permission to share my screen.
Yes, go ahead.
Wouldn't mind.
Yes.
My screen, okay. Okay. We'll be looking at some few areas, women entrepreneurship leadership lessons. First, we'll look at the concept of the 6W1H principle, which I use a lot to simplify concept for my student. Also to look at the wealth discourse itself and to see what can women do in terms of adaptive leadership style. What can we do as leaders when the opportunity comes our way, when we have prepared for the opportunity and we meet it in order to have success. What do you mean by entrepreneurship leadership? Of course, we know about entrepreneurship, we know about leadership. But in the literature, you find out that the argument has always been that entrepreneurship is not standing on its own, that it is a style of leadership, that we should try as much as possible to adopt that style because it's the one that brings result. Because efforts don't count, but results do. And so I have the privilege to share some thought on women in entrepreneurship, particularly leadership lessons. And then we move on from there if there are questions. If you look at this picture very well, you see that there is a human being very far away down. As it is said, or said by Mark Twain, the two most important days in one's life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. And so you can see that entrepreneurs will have to find out, be able to carve out the niche for themselves. What are your key skill sets as a leader? What can you do better than others? David Ricardo and Adam Smith, they call it comparative advantage. There is something, of course, you can do better. You cannot be a jack of all trades. But even if you're a jack of all trades, try and be a master of one. And so these are some of the lessons we want to look at, what to do. So you try to find out what you are made for. What can you do better? And so find out, why are you existing? Why are you living? Why in this field? As a teacher for all these years, I've had experiences where students will reach one particular course. After graduating, they now realize that that's not what they want to read. They will now go back to the university and read a fresh course. So we have several of them like that. So one has must to know why it's in existence, why it's living, and why am I a woman? Why? What are the role I'm to play? Of course, nobody can fill that gap for you, and that's what we do. As we often say, sometimes when I'm doing my work, I work with BDSPs, I work with SMEs, I work with startups, I work with. One of the major problems we face with them is lack of money. If you greet somebody like that, it's money. Even right now, just few minutes ago, about a minute or two ago, I've been under pressure by somebody to send money. So most of the time, it's money. So we have to send and help the people. But one thing people do business with, they say, if I have the money, I've done business. I work with you, Win. I was one of those people that were, excuse me, let me know whether you care, because like it's like I'm talking to myself. Please, Wura, am I passing any message across, please?
Absolutely.
Hello?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay,
We
thank
can
you,
hear
because
you
it looks
very
as if
well.
the place is looking quiet, as if my network is not working or something like that. Okay,
So it's
thank you
fine.
very much. Okay, I was one of the coordinators to Win. I played about four or five functions on Win. I was a researcher, I was a mentor and a monitor, and also a trainer and examiner. And we gave out between 1 million and 10 million to several students. I alone in Kaduna, I distributed about 500 million to about 60 persons. So I can tell you, after some few years, after the last regime of government, many of the businesses, in fact, I just send money now to one of the businesses that collapsed. And they've been coming to me asking for help, for money, for all that. And the government then gave them a lot of money. I gave some people 10 million. In fact, after collecting those 10 million, because I was going for monitoring, some people collected the money and used the money for something else. So we've come to realize that if you cannot make money without money, you cannot make money with money either. And so this is the issues, the lesson that women should learn about money. And of course, you have to be very creative and you'll be able to maintain. If you cannot create, you cannot maintain. If you cannot maintain, you cannot extend. So the essence of entrepreneurship leadership is to be able to create something out of nothing. And this is what lesson I believe we need to learn. Now, sometimes in entrepreneurship leadership, there are things that matter, because just a little comma can change the whole game. Now, if you look at this statement, a woman without her man is nothing. Now, if you ask, well, as a teacher, you can give this as an assignment to different categories of people and ask them to punctuate. Of course, in the secondary school, we learn punctuation. Either you put comma, you put full stop, you get this. So after some research to find out how the different folks, male, female, various gender outlook, we see this statement. Now, if you see how women, this is how women give the interpretation. A woman, without her, man is nothing. Now, you can see the punctuation here, and this is how women sees themselves in the entrepreneurship arena, in the field of leadership. A woman, comma, without her, man is nothing. Look what at the beginning. A woman without her man is nothing. Now, you can see that it's left for you to look at this statement the way you want to look at it, how you want to define it. That is why we send it to women. You see what women define it. A woman, comma, without her, man is nothing. That could be true. But they ask men to do the punctuation to see how men will look at it. You can see the challenge of the gender issues, why we are where we are today. Now, if you look at how men give the punctuation, you see that a woman without her man is nothing. Now, the challenge now is to say which one is right. As a teacher, I'll be asked to mark. Now, you see that from there, you see that we complement each other. There is a role for the man, there's a role for the woman. And in fact, such role cannot just be taken by others. It's adaptive leadership. But if you want to go into adoptive leadership, either to adapt or to adopt, will face the challenges of arriving at the answer here. So women, you can see the kind of role you are being expected to play, that without you, of course, man is nothing. And man also is thinking without him, the women may not be. So we complement each other, but the women have great role to play. Look at conceptual clarification here. Look at what I tried discussing about ladypreneurship and trying to look at what womenpreneurship is all about. People who see and sense opportunity. In the few years, one has been privileged to be a teacher. I've been asked in a number of forums whether people are born entrepreneurs or people are made entrepreneurs. But in the course of teaching entrepreneurship, I've come to understand that entrepreneurship is not just only taught, it is caught. When I'm teaching students entrepreneurship, you find out that the questions being asked is whether some people are naturally born with it. But you can, along the line, learn. You can see opportunity, but you have to sense it, whether it is real opportunity. There are 419. I mean, there are fraudsters. There are people who want to reap where they do not sow. And so they don't sense opportunity. They want to take advantage of others. So when you sense the opportunity, you need to size it and see, is it worth your time? Is it worth investing in your time? Investing your time in? Is it worth making sacrifices? So you size it, you look at it. And if it is worth it, and then you have to seize it. And you have to take advantage of it. And you don't allow such opportunities to just bypass you like that. And that's why we often say that success is defined as preparation, meeting opportunity. And so every day of one's life as a ladypreneur, you wake up, you prepare, believing that your outing today will create opportunity. I remember sometimes I work with some of my staff and I always caution them on the manner of their dressing to office. And every time I emphasize it, I say, you never can tell an opportunity will come. So one day, surprisingly, it has never happened. It happened for the first time. The governor of the state decided to send for me, and I'm to go with some of them. And I now say, you see, we are going to see the governor now. It's our dressing now that matter, because we cannot go there and embarrass him by dressing just shabbily or anyhow, as if we're just going, to play games or whatever. And so you can see that there are times when somebody is not prepared. When the opportunity comes, you may not be able to seize it, as it were. Now, we'll look at the 6W1H principle that we always talk about in terms of women in lesson 101, one-on-one. It's not 101, that's one-on-one. Now, in the lesson, we'll look at the 6W1H principle. And what does that entail? The 6W1H principle is trying to tell us the what, the why, the who, the which, where, when, and how. And so we'd like to look at what are we talking about when we try to discuss women entrepreneurship leadership lesson. Why is it so? Then who can learn this lesson, and which lesson should we take home? Where do we begin from? When do we start these lessons, start the implementation, and how do we go about it? So these are some of the lessons we try to look at. The first one is what? Me. Now, there are, of course, we see that businesses, capacity, we need to create employment. In fact, one of the reasons for giving people grants, I've been privileged to be a recipient of United Embassy Grant, British Council, GIZ, that's the German government, and the rest of them like that. And one of the things is capacity. Come to that later. And then ability to create employment. And then the linkages, because when we had the grant from the United States Embassy, they said that we must have somebody from the United States on board. And we have to start searching who will get to this. And thank God for, one of our partners in Lagos that was able to link us with a media guru in the US, a woman, which sorry, I couldn't even bring some of our platform here. She's a media woman, Mrs. Emerson, who was very wonderful and very great in terms of entrepreneurship in the US. I also came along with somebody from, is it Eritrea, to come and share ability to work from the street. How do you respond to policy? If you look at now, the government is marking huge amount of money in entrepreneurship, in grants, CBN, Bank of Industry, Smeden. Smeden is already working at that. The African University running 40,000 that are coming out there that you need to key in. And then what significant entrepreneurship impact do you want to make? What industrial cluster do you want to develop or you belong? The business expansion and market presence you want to make, the capacity you need to build to be able to challenge. One of the top business persons in Nigeria called one of my chief of staff when I was working in government in Abuja. He now asked him, he wanted to give him an assignment in his company. He said, can you handle a big thing if I give it to you? He came to me telling me this question. I keep on wondering how I could answer that question if they ask me, or let's say mama asked me, now, can you handle a big thing if they give you? So you have to build the capacity. A 75 cl bottle cannot take 100 cl unless you expand it to be able to take it. So you have to build your capacity and work towards reducing costs. If you cannot make profit, at least you must work towards reducing costs. And that's what many companies and businesses are doing nowadays. And so we move on. Why? Well, now, if you look at the reason for entrepreneurship leadership lesson is that businesses in Nigeria are becoming increasingly difficult. There are a number of people that lack basic management skills, especially people who promote formal SME. And there are poor infrastructure, road, and don't forget the pandemic that is challenging the poor economy that has just come out marginally out of recession. And then there's also limited, well, that is women entrepreneurship leadership lesson challenge facing women that they could not be able to overcome. So you have, what are the lessons that women need to learn as we go ahead? Number one, financial literacy. We keep on hammering it. And there are times I assume money. Number one, making money. Number two, managing money. Number three, multiplying money. Not everyone who can make money can manage it. Not everyone who can manage money can multiply it. Now, but the truth of the matter is that if you cannot make, you cannot manage. If you cannot manage, you cannot multiply. And so there are people that call themselves, they are just manager. The way the world is going now, you have to create, you have to maintain, and you have to extend. You have to be somebody that can create wealth out of nothing. As we mentioned earlier, making money without money. Number two, financial intelligence. That is one knowing where and when to invest his or her money. And so as women, you have to develop that financial intelligence. It can be learned. It can be learned through other people, through other lessons. Those who have failed, you can learn from their lessons. You can even learn the hard way if you refuse to learn from other people's mistakes and challenges and failure. So this financial intelligence, you know where to put your money. There are many pyramid scheme out there, and that's what we have what you call the greatest fool theory or the last fool theory. That in all these schemes where people are asking they will double your money and put this in, that if you put it, definitely somebody will be the last fool. And you don't want to be the last fool. If you don't want to be the last fool, you are sure you don't want to get yourself involved in those kind of places where money is claimed, you know, to be doubled and nothing will come out of it. So you know where to invest your money. For instance, the Nigerian Treasury bill is just below 2%. And if somebody is offering, and the inflation rate is about 17%. So what it means is that if you put your money somewhere, if you put your money in Treasury bill, you're already losing 15% from the one. And so that's what it means. And the bank have actually given, I've never heard of this in my history of about 30 something years of studying economics. And you find out that in banks now, you put your money, they say zero interest. It happens. I've experienced it and I'm seeing it and I'm looking at what they're doing, wondering what kind of economy are we on. So you have to know, how do you put your money? Where do you put your money? You have to learn it. And there are many texts and there are many theories, management that you can learn. But the WLI, that is the Women Leadership Institute, is there to help. And we say that apart from our founder and ambassador have said that we want you to be alone, you can be getting tips, you can be getting some bulletin, you can be attending refresher course. You can see this course virtually, you are getting it for nothing. And so refresher course that will be organized by the Institute, you come and learn some of this financial intelligence, to develop yourself, you learn how to manage finance, how to do bookkeeping, record keeping, and also we've done that before and we're still doing it. Now, one of the things that you have to know as a leader in the business world or entrepreneurship, whatever leadership position you find yourself, you must begin to think about tomorrow. They say it wasn't raining when Noah began to build the ark. So one has to begin to think about his or her tomorrow. So as women in leadership, you begin to think of tomorrow by planning. It's a science. You plan your life very well. There are what we call the short-term planning, the medium-term planning, the long-term planning, or if you like, you can even add the meso planning, which is neither long-term, medium-term, and somewhere in between. So you can plan your life very well, and particularly your finances, how you spend your money, how you invest your money, how you generate the money. All these things has to be planned. And as I said, the 5 P's of planning is like prevent poor performance. So you have to plan and ensure that in your life, you are a very good planner. Then empowerment, the art and science building your fortune and that of others. You've been, most of the time, particularly in government cycle, you hear that they're empowering people. And in the process of empowering, they give people buy keke napep, they give them fairly use can empower themselves there. Well, that's a form of empowerment. But the greatest empowerment you can have is to build your mental attitude, to build your capacity to deliver, build your capacity to bring more results, expand your horizon, expand your learning trajectory and processes to see what can you do better and how will you improve. And so these are what we call the financial empowerment, to learn the science of money. Then management has to do the proper budgeting, how to budget, the wisdom to spend your money wisely. It's not in everything that we spend. We have to be careful with the little that comes our way, and we can build our wealth, one naira at a time. or $1 at a time, or £1 at a time, or whatever currency we find ourselves, we can build that, plan. Now, is the financial balance is somebody to have the sense to know your asset and liability. Not everybody knows what is an asset or what is a liability. An asset is what brings money. A liability is what takes money. Now, in financial cycle, maybe in accounting, you can call, if you have a personal house, you can call that an asset. You say, well, if you have a personal car, you call that an asset. But in entrepreneurship financial sense, what we do is that what doesn't bring money, if your phone or your iPad or your laptop is not generating money for you, it's a liability. If your personal car is not generating money, it doesn't move to where money can come, it's a liability. If your personal house where you are staying is not generating fund, or it's not, you are not holding it for meeting, for things that can help you to generate money by some activities around that home, is a liability. So whatever is not bringing income your way, you must have that sense to know that that thing is a liability. And so freedom, one of the greatest things one can do in the position of entrepreneurship leadership is to be free from debt. They bring anxiety, that brings about slavery. If you can avoid that, you do it as much as well, particularly those who are startup. Sometimes we have startup want to start taking loan from day one. You don't have lesson, you've never run the business, we don't know, you want to take loan and get it. So we do that. Look at people that we give grant to of about 10 million, they cannot account for it nowadays. So we don't know what is happening to them. So taking debt from the start may not be good. You have to, as much as possible, avoid. Debt is the slavery of the free. And if anybody make attempt to do that, most of the time, there are few that are able to make it, but most of the time, they don't make it. And the most dangerous people to live within every society are those who have nothing to lose. So if you don't have that invest, you don't have experience. And that's why when we want to hire, we want to know the experiences. What have you done? What obstacle have you overcome in your life? What are your success story, your history of success? So if anybody, that's why we're writing your CV, the key things they look for when we're doing in HR, in hiring, we are looking for people who have experience in delivery, not people who have experience in giving excuses, complaining, worrying, and all that. So you need to be free from whatever form of financial, debt. Now, we are talking about, who are we talking about? Of course, we're talking about women. If women cannot do it, who can do it? Unfortunately, I did not bring the picture here. I was with them a few days ago. In Kaduna, we've been having challenges of security. They asked me not to post the picture, not to put it in any social media. Thank God I did not even put it here. Now, so the women we're having challenge Kaduna Abuja route. The security was so challenging until recently, a few weeks ago, they brought some women on the road. Immediately the women arrived, the kidnappers disappeared. According to the story that we're getting around that they don't want to be killed by women. And I can tell you, since then, we have never had a single incident of any form of kidnapping, killing, or whatever on that Kaduna road. The women have had it. So if the women cannot do it, we can. In fact, this is quite an eye-opener and a challenge to us, particularly those of us who reside in Kaduna Access. So I had to go and meet them. I discussed with them and find out the challenges they're facing to see if there are areas, some of us that are private citizens can be of support to them and all that to see what to do. So it was very, very great to see women getting this. So they virtually ran and went to some other places. They are not operating. Kudos to women, fantastic, brilliant women. I had to snap some picture with them, very proud of them, of what they're doing. So this is what we are talking about, the women entrepreneurship leaders lesson. It could be in any form, it could be in security, it could be in whatever industry that we find ourselves, we can be leaders. It has been shown. We have done, since I'm into financial disbursement to SMEs in Nigeria, women rate of return, the rate of payment of debt and loans disbursement by women is over 90%, and that of men is less than 50%. And so you can see the level that women have built integrity and trust that we just learn from their leadership. Technical knowledge, very important. Who can we talk about in this lesson? Those with technical knowledge, those professional leadership, and then right personnel, conducive business environment, and so on and so forth. So we need to have these skills to be able to build whatever we're doing. Now, there are various levels of knowledge. Of course, the major two type of knowledge is the one you know and the one you know how to find. And if you are able to in a better position of leadership. Now, the most difficult thing to do, those of us who have been teachers, the most difficult thing is to bring somebody from the level of mediocrity to the level of incompetence. Please, Wura, confirm whether I'm being heard, please.
I confirm, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So because the thing is becoming somehow, being a webinar, the interactive session is normally to allow question and answer, to ask people to respond to the slide.
Yes, you can go ahead. People can respond in the chat box as well.
Okay, very good. I want to be seeing that. I'm not seeing it yet, but we'll see. Now, we'll have that from mediocrity to the level of incompetence. You bring somebody, a mediocre, not somebody who have not been tested, somebody who have not been tried, to bring into the level of incompetence is the most difficult thing to do for those of us who are in training. But then you have people that perhaps are unconsciously incompetent. They don't know that they don't know. Then there are those who are consciously incompetent. They know that they don't know. Then there are unconsciously competent. They don't know that they know. Such people will normally try to see how we can expose them to give them the E-value so that they will be getters. Then we have consciously competent. And so you have to build your capacity as a woman to a level that you know that you know. And so once you know that, your value is higher and the demand for your services become higher. And these are some of the things that you need to learn as you are growing in the science of leadership. Which one are we talking about now? Now, there are various tools and models that you can apply to achieve results. This is a model canvas not developed by me, is there in the marketplace. About 9 of them. When you are developing, say, who are the key partners? And WLI is already there for the taking. What are the activities you'll be doing? What are the value you are bringing to the customer? And what are the channels you want to use? What are the cost structure, the revenue? Once you use some of these things, you get it. These are some of the models you can use. We also have the Johari model, where your blind spot, your open space, and all that. We have a number of models to use. Where we start, you must understand your environment very well. We have what you call the pestle, the political environment. There are certain business, SME you may run that the political environment may not be favorable. There are some, the economic environment, the social, technological, and legal environment. You have to factor in demographic, cultural. And you heard when Mama was speaking, giving her remarks, prefacing it in a way that mentioning adaptive leadership, look at the environment, particularly the cultural environment, the global environment, the macroeconomic environment. We do the SWOT analysis and the SMART report, try to analyze those environments to see, can we strive or can we not? When are we talking about? Women entrepreneurship leadership start now. They say if you don't do it now, there may be a law against it tomorrow. So you have to look at the major trends, laws and regulation, high expectation, digital technology, Internet of Things, globalization, and so on and so forth. So you have to make sense of these changes as an adaptive leader. If there are changes in the terrain, you need to have to study it to understand it. Sometimes you have to go for workshop training, you have to read some material, you have to study, you have to lock up yourself somewhere, go for retreat to understand how do you respond to the changes in the global environment and in the entrepreneurship period. How? Well, now, most of the time you join us. There are times in WLI we'll be having retreat for brainstorming sessions, group thinking, produce ideas, ideas produce results. And so when we have that in leadership lesson, WLI, you find out that by the time we work together, we develop the ideas, we resolve, we bake a bigger pie, and everybody will have a slice of it. You see that we are better for it. Now, this is the balance scorecard. The balance scorecard is what tells us how to run our vision as entrepreneurs, as leaders in entrepreneurship, and building the strategy. One is the financial. We have to find out the objective we want to achieve, the measures to know whether we achieve the target set, the initiative to take. And so the same thing with customer, the learning and growth process, as well as internal business processes. Some of the things we do is that we normally find out when we're doing business development as a business development service provider, we ask people about the 3 areas of concern. Number one, we ask the current situation. Number two, we ask about the customers. Number three, we ask about the competition. These are some of the things that challenge the business. So the internal business processes should be able to handle that, building the balance scorecard, and so that in this 4 quadrants, so that at the end, you'll be able to know where you stand as leader. Now, partnership, very important. I mentioned partnership when I was talking about the model canvas. So the partnership is very, very important. When you are building partnership, the more partners you build, the more network you have, the better your chances of success. There's what they call the triple helix. The triple helix is in anywhere you are. If you're in business, you must relate with you must relate with the university. Maybe relating with the university is trying to bring, build your knowledge, maybe increase your level of certification. And then so the government also, particularly in Nigeria, the government is a very huge business because most of the expenses in Nigeria is coming from the government side. So if you're in business, you must have this triple helix to know that you're operating at the center of the helix in terms that government, you are part of government, part of business, part of university. And one of the challenges we're having is that these three are not synergizing together. But where this triple helix is being grown, we now have what we call the quattro helix. The quattro helix now deal with 4. Triple means 3, quattro means 4. Now, apart from the government, instead of business, we look at the industry, the academia. The academia now deals not only with the university, but various institutions of learning. And then the civil society. Sometimes their advocacy program can affect your business. So sometimes you relate with them, you interface with them to see how can you build your business platform so that all these various quadrants that we have mentioned are captured in your business. So you see the level, all those arrows are explaining the level of interaction, how you move from one business to the other. Now, we've talked about the 6W1H principle. You're learning more often than not as you join us in the WLI to see some of the things we're doing, even particularly the Adaptive Leadership, Women Training Program, and so on and so forth. Now, we've talked about the what, talk about the why, talk about the who, the which, the where, the when, and how. Now, the measure of who you are is what you do with what you have. Please, sorry, Wurama, let me know whether my voice is clear, please.
Absolutely, loud and clear.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, ma, thank you. So the measure of who you are is what you do with what you have. Out, you are SWOT. Now, most of the time we do analysis with SWOT analysis, but advancement in knowledge say that you don't need to expose your weaknesses, you don't need to expose your strength. You more know them, but you now turn those ones to aspirations and results. So how can I turn my weaknesses or the threat into aspiration? How can I turn the various threat that I have into results? So instead of SWOT, we can talk about SWOT analysis. I've mentioned earlier, you cannot be an entrepreneurial leader if you don't have the character. So you can get to the top by any means, but character will be the one to keep you there. There are people that get to the top and they do what they call the U theory, theory U. You now fire yourself down. So character building, the right character will help you. The competencies. Many people are not competent enough in the field they claim, to be doing business in. So you need to build that competence. And competence will give you confidence. When you have the level of competence that is required in the field, it gives you confidence. And you can learn, and build your competence along your business, progression. Then the capacity I mentioned is that you cannot do the big thing if you have not built capacity to do the big thing. So you have to learn how to expand your capacity. You build it so that you can. So there's the 3 E's. You must build the expertise. The expertise is very important in your work. You have to build necessary expertise by learning, all the areas that involve. And if there's anything to be learned in your field, make every effort to learn it. Experience. You have to be experience come by continuous learning and by continuous service. So when you build experience, you find yourself doing very well in your field. So experience come as you walk along the line. Never allowed to have a gap of any experiential learning in your life. You need to be exposed. Exposure means you go to places where it is happening. You book your name there, you walk there and see, what can I do? What can I learn more? So build those exposure. what I did, these are some of my experience I'll share with you here. During my course, I was director of entrepreneurship in the university. And one of the things I learned from the students we produced over the years, for about 30 years that I've been in this teaching pedagogy in different universities, both within and outside the country, anytime I meet youth, they complain about not getting jobs. So I sat down one day, I was lying down, God, what can I do? Although it's not a novel idea, it's not new. So I developed the concept of entrepreneurship volunteerism, how people can volunteer their skills. And I started teaching them. I got everybody from the local government in my state, about 23 local government. I brought them to Kaduna to give them that concept of volunteerism. And I've asked them that they should volunteer, their skills for free to various organizations. Some did it. So I took some to Nivea. Nivea is a German company that produces, body product, that produces body product. So I took some of them and I took them to, I said, I'm bringing them for them to serve you for free. And then they said, okay, they're going to enroll them in marketing. They'll be giving them commission. Before I know what is happening, they got full employment. And those employment were been there. So, and then there are times you are volunteering your service because you have built capacity, the 3 C's and the 3 E. And in the process of doing it, you see people who have been joking with their job. You take it over from them. So these are some experiences I've had within the past few years that have been building volunteerism. I have to register with United Nations Volunteers Program, with my router program and all that. And I'm also working with various volunteerism, organizations. So if, for instance, as a lady now, you finish, you don't have anything, you want to learn experience, you go and offer your service voluntarily. You can come to WLI and say, okay, you want to be a volunteer in WLI, so you want to become a volunteer. So you learn, we teach you some skills, we guide you through skill development and all that. So we break walls, we hit targets. So these are some of the things I do, as I'll show you anytime soon. What I did, because I'm in Hausa land, although I'm not Hausa, but I learned to speak Hausa a bit, the zaman banza gwanda aikin gaskiya. So the real proverb was the zaman banza gwanda aikin banza. So I changed it to gaskiya. That is a Hausa proverb. I'm the one that changed the proverb a sort of to suit what I want to do. Rather than staying idle, it's better to do a work of truth. So help people to volunteer. Let them come and volunteer. How comes in WI we're looking for people to work? Look at the experience of Mama. Look at the experience of some of us. People just want to come and take money and go. This thing we're doing for you, we're doing it for free. But how comes people don't want to offer their services for free? People don't want to offer to serve financially. They're expecting that it's company, organization that should be able to do corporate social responsibility. Even individual, we offer our services to help humanity. In the process of offering those services to get, so you get, some blessings out of it. Redirecting the mindset to ask the right question, like, what can I do for myself? As opposed to thinking, what can others or the government do for me? That is the, the mind or the thinking behind the entrepreneurship development. So how do we go about it? Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And then what is leadership? The distance between vision and substance. And now, what is the shortest distance can take? That makes you a leader. The ability to get the head, hands, and heart to achieve results. Willingness, most important, to give up that part of the job that you enjoy doing. This is very difficult for leaders to do, and they find themselves caged because of their unwillingness to give up that part of the job that they love very well. Now, what leadership is not? It is not a person, but an art. The leadership is not something that revolves around a particular person. It is not static, but transitory in nature. And leadership is not for the long run. It can be short. It is not the arrogance of those at the helm of affair. That's not who we call leader. Those are the helm of affair say, this is our leaders. No, they are exhibiting some form of arrogance. And it's not the ignorance of those not exposed to it. So they say ignorant of the law excuses no one. So it's not the ignorant that I don't know about it. No, it's left for you to go and find out. Now the question, the multi-billion question in the world is that why should others be led by you? These are questions you need to answer yourself. Why should I lead people? Why should they accept my leadership? It's a question that we expect that women in leadership should be asking, should be doing from time to time. Leadership inspiration. One of the things to draw inspiration from leaders is, first of all, you look at the hindsight. Sometimes you look inside within. Sometimes foresight, just a little bit far away. Then you have farsight. Then you look upside. And then sometimes we trust in God. Sometimes it's not everything that will be our effort. There are some level of grace message from God that comes our way. And so if you are not looking hindsight to learn inspiration, we look inside, we look foresight, we look farsight. So make sure anyhow you are building leadership, trajectory, searching for opportunities. They exist, left, right, and center. So these 5 areas of leadership inspiration should be well explored by leaders. Also, the philosophy, the Greek philosopher that brought the ethos, the pathos, and the logos. That is the spiritual question or social question, the SQ, the EQ, that is the emotional. Then you have the logos, the intelligent question, and so on. So every area of leadership, you want to learn to see where you belong. I get this. The truth of the matter is that some of this training that we're doing here in WI for free, you might not be able to get all the answers maybe in one short training like that. Some of this training, they take 1 week. Sometimes we spend 3 days. We have the intensive. That is intensive can be 1 day, full 1 day from morning to evening. Then you have, that's highly intensive. Then you have intensive can be 3 days. Then you have normal can be a week or 2 or more. And so if you want to build this capacity, there are sacrifices you have to make. There are commitments you have to make to yourself to be able to build it. Some of the people are trained in entrepreneurship, volunteerism, all expenses paid. Fortunately, I got sponsorship, I got funding, and I was able to train them. You can see me there in black suit towards the extreme end. And so I brought them, gave them empowerment in Kaduna, and I trained them to build that entrepreneurship leadership, and they are better for it. Yeah, again, sometimes I engage myself with youth footballers and then try to see what can I do to help them, to guide them. I became a little coach to see what can be my contribution to build their leadership potential. So I work with youth in that. And here again, you can see both female. I won the cup. When I joined trying to build to become a small coach, I won the cup in Kaduna back to back, 3 times consecutively. Then I stopped. Since I stopped, I don't know what they've been doing because I've been so much engaged with some other things. These are people from Faith Foundation, by the right, that have worked to see how they build. You can see me seated there with them in the middle. I'm the only person not wearing, the jersey or the T-shirt for the program. And also, taxi, as a professor, try to also involve in taxi activities in Kaduna. We call it the CAT car. You want to work to see how can you be of help. I put my money on this to see what can I do, what can I help. At a level, it's not all about making money. It's about how can you offer help, what can you be. You can see me, I'm the one wearing the uniform to see how I can be of help. So we try to generate this in Kaduna to see how we can be impactful. This is safety people and to see how I also get myself involved in safety professionalism to see how can I build the safety of people. So when I say I want to get involved, I want to be there, and that is why sometimes I don't have much time for myself because you want to offer service to people for free. So I went to join some group to do coconut drinking competition. As you can see me there, trying to take coconut to do some form of coconut drinking competition. And then so you want to do so many things to make impact in society, and then God in his infinite mercy bring money your way. And I've also involved in a drum beating competition and doing it with some other people. So you want to work in volunteerism, there's nothing you cannot do. It's very exciting, you are happy, you're having peace of mind, the joy of seeing the impact you are making on people, not quantify. Yes, you can, and that's what Zipla said. If you can get everything you want in life, as long as you can help enough people to get what they want out of life. And that is the driving force. And I'm telling you, I've been blessed by God as a result of trying to help other people, never knowing what may come of it, and later you will see things coming. Then later in your own time, this is the matrix action form that we used to give people. What will you do differently after you have been trained? Who will you work with? When, frequency, and method? So we used to give them, then you need to put this into place. By the time you have it, you see that you have a guy. If you are playing football, there's no goal post you cannot score. So you must build a goal post around what you are doing. Sometimes when you are doing this work, there can be an elephant on the road. And you, this person, seeing the elephant, you want to turn back. You may find a way around your activity. There are challenges as a woman. That's why we talk about adaptive leadership. You should not just think that there'll be no challenges, that is free-flowing. The level we're getting as this level in our life is not that we've not faced challenge. If you ask Mama, she will tell you a lot of challenges she has faced, particularly in the murky terrain of politics where you know that it's the game of undermining each other. So there are a lot of challenges, but she was able to overcome them, and a lot of us have been able to overcome them. What do you do? Sometimes doing this, there can be burning desire. And when you have burning desire, you see the next thing, opportunity will just appear. Opportunity comes to those people with burning desire. And when you have the burning desire, the opportunity appears. If you look here, you see that serious between opportunity and action. There's even a bridge that you need to cross. Why do we have those gaps here? We have those gaps of people give excuses. They say there's no time, there's no money. TNT means tomorrow, not today. Please borrow me money, TNT. That means tomorrow, not today. And then sometimes people complain they are too old, they are too young, and all those type of excuses. How do we move from desire to action? How do we move? What do we need to do? Of course, to move, we need goals. You need to have some form of goal. Things are not as easy as you thought. You must have some goal. If you have those goals, you see that you'll be able to scale through those difficulties. And then there are things you need to ask as in professional women leadership lesson. Is there a better way of doing it? It needs to be improved. Have the output been achieved? What has happened as a result? What is the impact on stated priorities? Are there any unplanned impact? So you take note of it. Why were planned impacts not achieved? What are the long-term effects on professional strategy? What lessons can be learned in terms of relevance? What professional lessons can be learned in terms of achieving objectives? What resource use lesson can be learned? And finally, what elements might be replicated in the course or in the future, in the course of doing this? Now, in entrepreneurship leadership, you must learn how to grow. If you are not growing, you'll be deteriorating. It's either you swim or you sink. And so in personal, you have to learn how to grow your personal, capacity. Explore your personality trait and learn how to leverage them in order to grow as a person. Deepen your relationship and better understand your partners, parents, or children, whatever you have. Then your career, very important. You have to get those into. See, do you want to develop career out of what you're doing, or just want to do it as a vocation, or want to do it as a pastime, whatever it is? Now, this is the assignment that I want to give. Please, I want you to do it, and then you reach out to the coordinator of WI and share your result with us. Test your system personalities to see if you have what it takes to be an impactpreneur leader. It's just about, it takes you about 15 minutes. You do it at your own time at systempersonalities.com, www.systempersonalities.com. You can snap it as I'm talking, and then you go through it later. Read carefully the test result part, introduction, strength and weaknesses, career part, workplace habit. These are part of the things you learn as a woman entrepreneurship leader. So you need to know some of these things so that you can get them. So these are site. I'm not the one that developed them. They're there for people to do. We use it for training and so on. Then effectuation, you test and try to look at your own capacity to deliver, how you bring out results. I look forward to co-creating some inspirational entrepreneurship leadership together with you by the grace of God. Now, what do we see? Know the different entrepreneurship personalities. Hello, let me find out. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Then we develop the entrepreneurship. Define your own purpose and impact vision. Define your own purpose and impact. Develop that and also test and iterate an entrepreneurship. Pitch and present an impact business idea to different stakeholders. What do you do? Identify impact investors and approach them to do funding. This team together, each achieve more. That's the meaning of team. The kind of organizational structure needed for an innovative impact venture. Measure, map, and monitor the impact of your entrepreneurship. Develop the purpose to impact plan using Harvard model developed in Craig and Snow Code. So you need to get that very clear. And not only that, then you can also be an entrepreneur today. So Nick Craig and Scott, they developed those are from Harvard Business School. Look at it here, from purpose to impact. Nick Craig and Scott Snow. So if you study all these things, you see that your entrepreneurial leadership life will be better for it. These are materials I'm trying to suggest, leading from purpose. These materials are there. This is Nick Craig too. You try it. If you get this material, it can help you develop. This one is very, very good. Is the author of Theory U, Otto Scammer and Catherine Copper. If you get leading from the emerging future, very, very interesting. From from ecosystem to ecosystem economy. So you apply the theory you to read, transforming business, society, and even yourself. So this material is very good if you can get across it. Now, but we should remember there was a country, uh, and that's the trouble with Nigeria. The trouble with Nigeria can make things to fall apart. And when things fell apart, the center cannot hold. Chinachebe then became no longer at ease, and the arrow of God fell on him. And he became the man of the people. And the newspaper reported that Chinachebe died in the Antis of the savannah. Thank you very much for today. We entertain some questions so that we go to other things. Thank you. God bless you richly.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Professor Atkinson. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think when I introduced you, I remember telling everybody that your life and your journey is very interesting. So I hope everybody has seen exactly what I mean by the colorful adventures that Professor Atkinson has embarked on. Please follow him, find out more about him from our website, and the materials that he has shared with us. When you get the slides, they'll be made available. I personally am going to take my 16 personalities test immediately after this session to find out if I have what it takes. Thank you so much. You shared so much with us. I'm just going to go through to see if there are any questions. Everybody is just asking for the slides, really. But I think we can provide some feedback to Professor Atkinson. So I would like to know from anyone which of his entrepreneurship lessons stood out for you the most and why. So if you can share with us, either you can speak for a few minutes or you can type in the chat box. If you would like to participate, please let me know. You can just share with us which entrepreneurship lessons stood out for you and why, just so that professor can get some feedback and we can have a little discussion before we wrap up for today. Time is well spent, but everyone has been absolutely fantastic. Our engagement has remained high. Our numbers have remained high. And, this is what we do at WLI. We keep it coming with relevant content and discussion and information and just helping people get the best out of life for free right now. So thank you all so much. We have Rosaline Ngozi. Are we making Rosaline a panelist so she can speak?
Yes, I just made her a panelist.
Okay. Hello, Rosaline. So we want to know which of Professor Atkinson's entrepreneurship lessons stood out the most for you and why. Over to you, but you're still muted. Okay, I'm not sure. I think, Rosaline, are you there? Okay, do we have somebody else while we try and give Rosaline a few minutes? Is there anybody else that would like to share? Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Very insightful. Thank you. Excellent presentation. These are some of our comments. Um, okay, well, maybe I will answer. So for me, I'm particularly excited about learning all the things that I learned in numbers. So the
Yeah.
6Ws.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Rosaline, are you here?
Yeah. I'm on board, please. It's the network that is a bit disturbing. And
No
please,
problem. That's fine. So go ahead.
I really appreciate everything he said on board, and I was overwhelmed by all the proposals he put on ground. And at the point I was saying, do we say he's master of all? And not that he's master of all. He's really doing excellently well in all the programs. I'm overwhelmed, even on the issue of entrepreneurship, trying to empower people, a certain volunteerism. I was even shocked because even in my present organization, there is a form they brought on board that people should, state their interest in working as a volunteer officer. And I was saying, so he has been on board over this issue, and I pray that God will strengthen him more and will bring more people as well to join with him. Thank you, ma.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And amen, amen to everything that you said. I share your sentiments as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have somebody else that would like to share with us as well. Okay, we have Professor Atkinson on standby as well if he needs to comment or answer any question. So
No. I was just trying to greet Roslyn Ngozi for
great
contribution, and thank you very much. And we
you, sir.
look forward
Thank
to
you, sir.
having them in WLI. Let them come interface with us. Go to the website, reach out to WLI. We have a lot to offer you, and there are so many things we can do. This is just tips of the iceberg. We cannot finish everything in one day. And you reach out and let us see what WLI can do for you, for your organization, for your group, forget this, and go to different places. Tell people what you are doing. We can come, you come in small group, in few groups, we can impact you at WLI. Wish you the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I
Thank you
appreciate.
very
God
much.
bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we can hear from Nena Aladun. I think you're still muted. Okay, so Nana, if you can hear me, we're ready to hear which lesson stood out for you. If not, we'll just move on quickly. Our time is fast spent. The one question that I had that maybe Professor Atkinson can follow up after this is someone is asking for recommendations on sources of financing for women-owned businesses. Prof, are you still there?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so there's a question around the financing.
Of course, there are many financing options in Nigeria. One, you can Google, you will see them. Sometimes you have to reach out. One, Central Bank has a lot. Bank of Industry has a lot. Development Bank of Nigeria has a lot. The various bank has a lot. Lagos Business School Enterprise Development Center has a lot to offer. And the easiest way to do is to get a BDSP, Business Development Service Provider. And if you have them, they guide you. Sometimes they ask you to pay. You don't have the money, but they can use your skill and resources to help you to get the money. They take certain percentage. And they are officially recognized by Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture. It depends on the kind of thing, even Sweden. And so also you have United States Embassy that spend. And then another thing is that if you don't have the skill, you can liaise with institutions, WLI, universities, organization, you liaise with them. You learn and develop finance there. And another one that I teach people that perhaps they don't know anything, zero, the lazy way to get finance. The lazy way. It's something we have done. One, as I said, volunteerism. Just go to a place, volunteer your services for free. In the process, after you do, sometimes they will call you and ask you, what do you want to do in your life? You now say, look, I want to go into this business, I don't have money. Don't be surprised, you get angel investors, they pay your bills and they sponsor you. And so there are many things to do. Sometimes you get a job to develop the finances. So people just want somebody who will give me money, they come and put it so that you go and spend. No, we have done that, nothing has come out of it. You must first, if you don't have the money, use your time. If you don't have, you can't claim to don't have the time. There are two things people are looking for in life: to have both time and money, which is the difficult thing to achieve. Sometimes you have money, you don't have the time. Sometimes you have the time, you don't have the money. So what you are looking is for the two. So if you claim you don't have the two, you don't have money, you don't have time, then you are virtually not existing. So most of the time, what you do is to see how you can bring your time and invest. So somebody will buy your time, somebody will buy your skills. So if you claim you don't have anything, you want your brother, you say, give me 200,000, then you go and squander. No. Then you develop a business plan, and these are things you can be trained on. You can receive them, you can have them. And so there are so many ways to do it. It's not something we can, it's a training on its own. It's a model. It's a curriculum, a content that we can build in WLI to show you something we have done, and we show you. You will see it practically. So, and we ask that those of you interested, you reach out to WLI. That is a course module that can be prepared to get this. And this is what I do. This is the training we do to help people to build finance to get. But it's not a one-off thing. You can learn it and you can get it. And the idea, we've mentioned them to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Exactly what he said. So you never know. One of our next master classes may focus right on just on that. So please keep looking out for information so you can register when it's time to continue to get more practical knowledge and training from WLI. So we'll take our last question from Ene. Ene, you can
Hello.
speak. Thank
Hello,
you.
good evening. Thank you so much. This has been so enlightening. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you, Professor. I'm sorry, my camera isn't on. I'm not camera ready. I hope that's okay. But can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We all can, yes.
Okay. So my question is, the professor made a comment, or he made a statement that said you need to make money. You need to know how to make money, invest money, and manage money. Like all three go together. But I'm gonna use myself as a personal example. Like I know how to make money with my intellect, like what I studied, and then I know how to save money because I know, all priority list and stuff. But I do not know how to like manage them. How do I put it? Multiply the money to, sort of make good investment options and all, no matter how hard I try to study and get more financially literate and all that. So I'm just trying to understand how the three of them must go hand in hand. And is it possible to just know one or know the other and then, how do you put it? Like outsource the others for other people that are better at it? Because I mean, if you know yourself, you know yourself. You can't be best in everything. So if you know yourself best, just pick the one that you can do and then outsource the rest.
Thank you, Eddie, for your question. Thank you. Professor? Did you get any question? Okay.
Yes. Not because the audio was somehow. Please, can you help me to
Okay, so her question is around the part of your lesson that talked about knowing how to make money, manage money, and save. So she's asking, is it only effective when you can do all three? Because, for example, she knows how to make money and save regularly, but she hasn't been successful in managing and investing so that the money multiplies. Is it okay to know maybe one out of three and outsource the others, or is it a skill that you have to master all three on how to make money, manage money, save money for you to be successful?
Yes, exactly. The most difficult part of it is how to make money. Once you can make money, you must learn the art and science of managing money. And then after you learn the art and science of managing money, you must multiply it. And the way to multiply money is to invest it. Either reinvest it into the business or reinvest into another business or reinvest it into various investment instruments like the mutual fund or the capital market or another business or whatever you want to see how to invest in. But please forget about all those other areas of investment that have no regulatory framework, because if you lose your money, you don't know who to hold. So if you can make money, you have to learn the art and science of managing that money very well. If you don't manage money very well, money will disappear. Money is a spirit, a sort of, because money travels. If you manage money very well, money will travel and go and tell other money, come and see the woman that can manage us very well. And then they will come back. But if you don't manage them very well, that's why you see sometimes people become poor. And the money will leave and go and report you to the headquarters of money and say, this woman cannot manage me very well. And that's how the money will just disappear. So it's a spirit, it travels and it reports whatever you are doing. And that's why people are richer. When they become rich, they become poor because they cannot manage. The managing is the essential part of making money. So, and if you manage, as I said, there are two components of managing. Either you make more money or at least you cut costs. That is how to manage money. If you cannot increase the profit, you have to manage the cost. So you are managing money. And so when there are surpluses, or if you have some little margin, you now reinvest back to the company by expanding a particular line or creating a new line, or go and invest in another business so that you have multiple streams of income. So that is the essence of investment. You can't just be keeping your money like that idling away. So you have to go and invest. And if you don't know what to do, you get expert to advise you to see what can you do. And as I said, every time we're doing this thing, just don't think that WLI is only when there's workshop, there's seminar, then you now come. After that, you disappear. WLI is there, the offices are there, the phone numbers are there, the emails are there. You can write and say, look, I want to come for this council, I want to do this, and we are going to see if we can open a counseling office, a sort of business clinic, so that we have a small office for business in WLI. Say, okay, look, if you have these challenges, come and meet us and get this professional advice, get this and that. So they are there. So you have to learn those skills and develop them. And it's easy to do it, and you definitely achieve it if you put more effort. So thank you very much. I think, Ura, can I be excused now?
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
In fact, another meeting has been waiting for me. I've been apologizing to them. That's why you see I'm open there. I told them by 5 they've been there.
Your time. We are so sorry.
So where is Mama? So greet her for me. Tell her that my greetings. We always thank her for the opportunities and get always be ready to work for her and with her at any given time. Thank you very much.
So everyone on here is saying thank you. Have a lovely day. Thank you for your time. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for your interaction. We have to wrap up today. It has been a fantastic day one session for us. Please, you don't want to miss tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the end, and we're going to have just as much power-packed information. We have 3 courses to look forward to tomorrow. We're going to be talking about leadership framework for female leaders from our human capital strategist, Mr. Chukwuwozo. We're going to be talking about networking and support circles, which is really important, by Ehime Aibe. She's the founder of Sweet Kiwi, the healthy brand. And we're talking about gender mainstreaming, and that's delivered by Ambassador God knows Igali. So you don't want to miss tomorrow. Thank you all very much for your time. Thank you for those who contributed from the first session. Thank you, Dr. Agatha, Adeshewa, Emma, yes. Ifi, thank you for everyone that asked questions now. Thank you. That's all we can say. Thank you to our professor. Thank you to Hodan. Fantastic sessions, and most especially thank you for our founder for giving us this opportunity. Please come back tomorrow and we'll be more than happy to keep this going. Thank you all so much for your time and your participation. I would ask Ms. Kachuku Somachi, would you like to say anything, our program director?
Not today, but I'll have more to say tomorrow. But thank you everyone for your time, and just show up tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be amazing. And come with paper, come with pen, and come relax, because tomorrow we're going to learn a lot of new concepts. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I see your comments. I see the thanks. Thank you all for being absolutely fantastic, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.